Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. We're off to a hot start. We're happy to have you. Lucas is unprepared. He went to the vending machine to start the show. His just insatiable hunger for hot fries.
10 a.m. hot fries.
Cannot be stopped. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. You have the F&M Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch if you would like to get involved there too. You've had many Senior Bowl updates. I know Ramon has done a great job and will continue to. Today, the last day of practice for the Senior Bowl, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. Game on Saturday. But I believe today is the day everybody dips out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the best of them will practice for one day, and then the agent will be like, now you're good.
I'm pretty sure the Titans radio gang is headed back today.
I would say. And you have Shrine Bowl, actually, later this afternoon, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So a couple of all-star games in the college football world, pre-draft process. We understand the level of importance. And for the Titans, you have Mike Borgonzi down there, among others, including Brian Callahan, Chad Brinker, and pieces and parts of their staff about, going about the process of putting back together this puzzle. It's a tough puzzle to kind of construct. It's one that doesn't really have a guideline on the box for you to follow. You're just trying. You're going to have to try a bunch of things methodically to see how to get this thing back up and functioning, not as quickly as humanly possible, but to do it the correct way, not to microwave the results. They tried that last year. It didn't work. Now it has to be a sound process, and that's what they continue to bring in experienced personnel executives to help do, which we'll talk about the front office construction a little later in today's show. But Mike Borgonzi down at the Senior Bowl, speaking with a handful of Titans media, including Jimmy Wyatt, and was asked a question about the top priorities on this roster, given the number of roster needs.
I mean, listen, you can go through the roster. We're going through. I'm meeting with the coaches now, and we have some holes to fill along, offensive line. That would be number one, and then just depth level across the whole team right now. Creating competition is going to be the biggest thing. Whether it's through free agency, through the draft, it might be a guy that we sign off the street or the workout guy, but really just we want to build the fronts first, offensive, defensive lines. And then build depth along the perimeter.
Yeah. So, is it a smokescreen? Is he trying to bait somebody to come up to the number one overall pick? Be like, no, we don't want a quarterback. Trade up for us. It's going to be people are going to read too much into everything that they say while they hold the number one overall pick until such time as there is a trade or there isn't a trade. But I do take him at his word. Like a lot of these great football teams, what defines the Philadelphia Eagles this year?
Yeah, their offensive line.
And defensive line.
Yeah, for sure. Their defensive line is better now than it even was the year they got to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They're younger. They're more athletic there. But, look, what's the hit rate on a new general manager or a new head coach of an NFL team with a total rebuild saying, we want to build from the trenches? I'd say it's probably pretty close to 100%.
Yep.
Maybe 98, 99.
I would say so.
And they've kind of started that foundation with one, what you hope will be a foundational piece on each side, with J.C. Latham on one and T'Vondre Sweat on another. Early returns, solid on both. So they've begun that process a little bit from last year's draft.
And they have some pieces, including Peter Skoronski and Lloyd Cushenberry on the offensive line. Jeffrey Simmons still under contract. Jeff got 2 more years on his contract. By the way, congrats to Jeff on making the Pro Bowl.
Jeffrey or Justin?
Are you tweeting from the Pro Football Talk account now?
I think you are.
Titans legend Justin Simmons being named to the Pro Bowl according to Pro Football Talk. Now, there were many Titans fans that did want Justin Simmons, as a matter of fact.
I was going to say, that wasn't that long ago.
But Jeffrey Simmons is who they meant to say. I am convinced that these people from other outlets outside of local outlets misspell Titans players' names wrong on purpose.
Did they delete it? Did they fix it at all? Or did they just not even bother?
I feel like if it was any other team, they might have changed it. If it's the Titans, I bet it's still up there. Is it still up there? Are you scrolling?
Yeah, I'm looking. Justin Simmons, come on.
It's not even remotely close. Like it's not,
like that. That's not even an autocorrect
at least
thing.
with the Byron Young thing, I'm not going to say I get it, but it would be a more understandable mistake.
They deleted it.
Well done by them.
Also, Lucas, before we truly get started today, it's pronounced Olympic.
See, now why are you bringing up old stuff?
Just wanted to make sure we clear all our bases before we get the show running.
I was kicking myself on the way out of the studio yesterday because I thought that was a perfect opportunity for me to jump in there with a Tennessee Men's Clinic ad, and I just missed the mark. I got so distracted by Lucas talking about flaccid objects.
Luca. That's what my grandma calls me.
Does she really?
Yeah.
Either way, building through the trenches, it's an important thing. 99% of first-time general managers would probably emphasize that point because it is a successful one. Are they assured to go in the direction of, nobody's going to say a tackle at number one overall, but just a first-round pick on an offensive lineman, a first-round pick on a pass rusher, just because Mike Borgonzi said they want to build through the trenches? No, not necessarily. But there is, as they evaluate different methods of team building, all things have to be taken into account. And the cost-benefit analysis of, let's say Cam Ward is the best quarterback in the draft class. We can all agree Cam Ward is the best quarterback in the draft class, yes?
He is the best quarterback prospect in this draft, yes.
We have no idea what the Titans' board is going to look like, their draft board. As they put it together, piece it together, it'll be a process of some weeks. They'll have a couple of different versions of it. They'll go into the draft room with it. If Cam Ward is the best quarterback in the class and you have the number one overall pick, but you, in a hypothetical world, have that best quarterback in the class graded out somewhere between 15 and 25 as a prospect, can you in good conscience spend the number one overall pick on a prospect that you have graded? If they were to grade him that low, we have no idea. They may have him graded way higher. But if you're in that position, could you in good conscience spend the number one overall pick on a prospect that you have graded somewhere in the late teens to early 20s?
Yeah, and apply that to Shedeur Sanders, too. I mean, flip that conversation over. Let's say you have Cam Ward graded as the number one prospect, but you believe, like many do, that Shedeur Sanders would be a far better fit in a Brian Callahan offense. Could you then, in good conscience, take Shedeur Sanders, who you might believe is not as good a player as Cam Ward, but you think is a better fit, but you take Sanders at number one and allow somebody else to take Cam Ward? So these are the games we're going to play all year long, and they've barely taken the first step in their evaluation of these guys. They've had one conversation with Shedeur Sanders, and I'm sure they've turned on some tape, but they're also busy right now at Senior Bowl, where neither of those quarterbacks are. So it is a very, very incomplete process right now in terms of that evaluation. Do we have some news?
We have some breaking sports news. Jackson? According to the Tennessean, Bill and Chrissy Haslam, included in a group that has Candace Parker and others, have put in a WNBA bid for the city of Nashville, Tennessee.
All right.
How about that? That's exciting.
Faith Hill and Tim McGraw.
Okay. All right.
Also involved.
Now, wait, because we did this with baseball. They put Eddie George in a Nashville Stars jersey, and everybody got excited, and then everybody realized, no, they don't have money yet.
Well, there's one particular name that matters.
Haslam.
Yes.
So Haslam's already got, or what is the process of him completing the sale of the Nashville Predators or completing the purchase of the Nashville Predators? Because that was kind of like a multi-year plan as they eased him into his role there.
I believe it is July 1st of this year that he officially becomes the majority owner of the Preds. Alex Doherty can corroborate that. He'll join us at 11 to talk about the Preds' recent struggles. But I believe that's the case, that this summer Haslam officially is the Preds' majority owner.
Okay, so what do you have for the WNBA bid that you don't have for the baseball idea? You have real money. You have Bill and Chrissy Haslam. You have people who have experience in this department. Candace Parker, Faith Hill, Tim McGraw, Peyton Manning.
You're ready for that.
All involved. Look at you. He did something right this morning. I don't have to yell at him right out of the gate. I'm excited. I want a WNBA team. I want basketball in the city of Nashville. Now, obviously, we'll read the details of this, and I'd be curious to know, because I'm I'm pretty entrenched in this position. I understand that there are baseball fans everywhere in the world. I understand it's an international game. It was at one point in time America's pastime. I don't think it's America's pastime anymore. I think that's become football.
Agreed.
Pretty resoundingly at this point. And it's not like baseball is dying. Like, I'm not going to do the Cam Newton thing. But me personally, I would prefer a WNBA team to a baseball team. I have been in the city of Nashville. If I want to go see a baseball team, I'll go to the Sounds Park or I'll go to Atlanta because the Battery's awesome. This is a baseball market, but for the Atlanta Braves.
Yes.
This is I wouldn't say a free agent basketball market because the Grizzlies exist and there's enough John Morant fans in the world.
This is more a college basketball town than a professional basketball town.
Absolutely. So, is there room for a WNBA team where baseball would take significantly more money, significantly more investment, significantly more infrastructure, or can you just bring a WNBA team to town, get a couple nights at, I would hope not municipal, respectfully. I would hope that would be at Bridgestone Arena.
Yeah, it would seem that way. I mean, the lead of this story, Paul Scribina of the Tennessean.
Well, why don't we get into that coming up next?
All right,
we
we'll
got
get into more of
details
this.
from the story in the Tennessee and the news of the day. Nashville's put in a bid for a WNBA team. We'll talk about it coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So we got news. The news of the day is that there is a Nashville contingent involving Bill Haslam and several others of note, but Bill Haslam matters the most here because he's got the most money.
Bill and Chrissy.
That are Bill and Chrissy, who have put in a bid for a WNBA franchise to come to Nashville. So there's a couple of things to note about this. WNBA expansion has been planned for a while. They are trying to capitalize on the rating spike that they have seen with the recent influx of talent. It's been growing incrementally, people's level of interest in women's basketball, but we understand that Caitlin Clark at the forefront of this, and then people like Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, who's obviously coming up through the pipeline at UConn right now, how much interest there is in Cameron Brink. There's legitimate star power now in the WNBA. There has been stars in the WNBA for its entire history, but it seems like that's never been more present or at the forefront than it has been in the last couple of years. So they're trying to capitalize on expansion, expanding to more markets, growing their television contract, making the athletes and the franchises more money, and to turn this league into something that at some point will be a profitable endeavor because famously, the WNBA in its history has been subsidized by the NBA because they've been trying to support the women's game, but that hasn't always been the popular thing to do. Women's basketball has become infinitely more popular over the course of the last 15 to 20 years, and certainly Pat Summitt, the University of Tennessee, the Lady Vols, Gino Auriemma, UConn, the influence of those powers over the course of those last 2 decades has really added jet fuel to that. Now you have the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. Fair to call it a phenomenon? That's not hyperbolic?
Not hyperbolic.
Okay.
The Tennessee Summit
is the name, the proposed name.
Yes, so the lead of the article written by Paul Scribina of the Tennessean, in quotes and italics, it says, and now the starting lineup for your Tennessee Summit. And he says that's the sentence Bill and Chrissy Haslam, Candace Parker, Faith Hill, and Tim McGraw, and Peyton Manning are hoping to hear at Bridgestone Arena sometime in 2028. And he does say that July 1st is the date that Bill Haslam officially takes over as the majority owner of the Preds. But that is the ownership group that put in a bid today to bring an expansion team to Nashville. The quote from Chrissy Haslam is, "This is going to be Tennessee's team. There's going to be families with daughters who play basketball, but there are going to be people who don't even know yet that they are going to love this sport."
So obviously the Summit, named for Pat Summitt, would become the first professional women's team in the state of Tennessee, and they're vying to become one of the expansion franchises. We know that Golden State is getting ready to expand or to add or to start playing in 2025 with their Golden State Valkyries expansion franchise. WNBA been planning expansion for some time. Nashville wasn't necessarily thought as a top candidate. And, you're just reading lists of cities. It's kind of like the baseball stuff when we get into the slow parts of the summer and people start asking us, is Nashville going to get a baseball team? And Rob Manfred will gaslight the people of Nashville and be like, well, really like Nashville, and keep hinting at it until such time as there is a bank account backing a Nashville baseball team.
Show me the money.
Yeah, correct.
Portland and Toronto are the other cities that are joining the expansion along with Golden State. So that'll boost it to 15.
So this article in the Tennessean goes through the things that you need to know. And quickly from Candace Parker, quote, "Tennessee is the DNA of everything women's basketball stands for. I'm excited to be a part of the group working to bring a WNBA team to the state and honor Coach Summitt's legacy." So apparently Bill Haslam called Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell last summer with the idea of bringing a team to town because Freddie O'Connell has talked publicly about his level of interest in providing the city an additional professional sports franchise. He's been more on the side of women's basketball, certainly more than the Titan Stadium, at least publicly. He's been more on the side of women's basketball than he has been on the Titan Stadium, and certainly to the effect of baseball, because, again, the baseball proposition is a much harder problem to solve at this time. The article adds that there's no scientific formula to determine the answer as to what are the odds, essentially, that Nashville gets a WNBA team. But when Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the league, visited Nashville back in last April, I guess that was, She talked about it, quote, certainly being a candidate for expansion, along with several other cities at the time that included Cleveland, Houston, Philly, St. Louis, and Kansas City. Now, the venue that they would play in is the thing that we don't necessarily have the answer to.
Yeah,
here.
the Tennesseans suggest Bridgestone Arena. That's the idea.
Jackson, did you say something?
Adam Sparks put out an article where Bridgestone Arena would be the plan, and they would plan a practice facility, kind of like the Indiana Fever built.
Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with the Indiana Fever's practice facility.
It's state of the art. It's downtown. It's very nice.
There's a Twitter account at TN Summit was just created, and the bio says
just create like as we speak today.
Oh yeah, like the bio says for Tennessee for women's basketball for Pat, announcing our official bid to bring the Tennessee Summit to Nashville. And there's a statement in the first and only tweet on the at TN Summit account from Bill Haslam. It says, we believe a WNBA team based in Nashville could serve as a beacon for girls and women, young and old, across Tennessee, while also creating more opportunities for sports fans as our community continues to grow. In building this new franchise, we will take inspiration from the Nashville Predators and its community-first approach to running the business. This WNBA team will establish itself as a mainstay in Nashville and communities throughout the state of Tennessee.
It's a fascinating proposition. So, like, we're a great... Jackson, you a baseball fan? I feel like you're the biggest baseball fan of the three of us because Lucas and I, famously don't watch.
I like baseball. I wouldn't say I'm a huge I'm not an MLB fan. I'm more of a college baseball fan.
So there's nothing to say that you can't still be a baseball fan in the city of Nashville. You just may not have a Nashville baseball team. Like, how many people are really pounding the table for a Nashville baseball team? I understand that they're baseball fans. I understand that there would be some level of immediate interest.
A lot of people. There's a lot of people.
I think it'd be fun to go to games, but I feel like a lot of the diehard baseball fans would not leave the Braves or the Brewers or another team that they're rooting for a new Nashville baseball team.
It's such a bigger uphill climb for baseball in Nashville, it seems. Because, one, there is an existing facility that a WNBA basketball team can play in right away. There's arguably two, but Bridgestone is, as people are reporting, the most likely, if not the venue that they have in mind when submitting the bid. Where on earth would you put a baseball stadium right now? I mean,
for sure.
I know they've done the renderings. I know that the PSC Metal site, it either went up for auction or was recently put up for sale. Either way, that parcel of land that's been kind of a thorn in the city of Nashville's side has been made more available than it's ever been. But the baseball renderings, when they put out the baseball renderings, were deeply flawed because they didn't own the land. And they had the damn pedestrian bridge dumping right out into a new baseball stadium, not taking into account the Titans and their interest in the land over there. The new Nissan stadium that's now being built and was being vied for at the time. There are so many more logistical hurdles, and it's just, I think, tougher to generate an organic fan base here.
TK on the FNM Bank chat says you're nuts if you think more people are begging for a WNBA team over MLB.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
There are more people in Nashville that watch baseball than the WNBA.
Indisputably.
And probably the NBA.
Baseball,
to be honest.
Without question.
It's
not a matter of what do people want more.
There's more demand for baseball.
Sense.
Yes, there is more demand for baseball. But you're right. There are far more obstacles. There's far more games, far more seats to fill in a baseball stadium than at Bridgestone Arena. It is a lot easier to execute a WNBA expansion team than it would be an MLB expansion team in Nashville. It doesn't mean that there's more demand for a WNBA team, although I think that there would be interest. I think that we're seeing what's happening with women's basketball, man. Like, how much did we talk about Kim Caldwell and just how insane it was what she did, giving birth and then a week later coaching against South Carolina? The amount of buzz that the NCAA tournament has created in the last couple of years on the women's side, and to have any sort of pipeline for those stars in Nashville on the WNBA level, and to loop it all together with the Pat Summit connection and keeping it local in that way, I think this could work. I'm excited for this.
It could be, well, again, there are more hurdles than, like, Nashville's not immediately getting a WNBA franchise. They have submitted a bid. They're going to put together a compelling argument. It's going to be a bit of a process. And I think the Valkyrie got approved in 2024, getting ready to play in 2025, if I'm not mistaken on the timeline on that. And I'm not sure the specifics of WNBA's planned expansion, like what their timeline is. Do they want to have all 4 of these expansion teams playing by 2026?
Their commissioner has said they would like to add a 16th team by 2028. Cleveland,
by 2028. Okay,
yeah.
So we're talking long play here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 3 years. That's the goal, is for there to be a WNBA team playing in Bridgestone Arena by 2028. Cleveland has submitted a bid. Patrick Mahomes has talked about he is part of a group that is trying to get the WNBA in Kansas City. St. Louis and Philly have also been mentioned as possible destinations. So, yeah, this is going to be a process. This is not an announcement that it's official the WNBA is coming to Nashville. It's official that Nashville is trying to get the WNBA.
I'm seeing some comments, and again, it's not representative of the entire audience. What are you laughing at?
Brandon on the FNM Bank chat.
That was the one I was getting ready to read.
Way too early, Tennessee Summit head coaching hot board leader, Glenn Ellerbe. Brandon has been trying to get Tennessee offensive line coach Glenn Ellerbe fired for years.
Well, you're talking about a different Brandon than the Brandon that I'm getting ready to read the comment from. Brandon Scott on YouTube writes, and you can interact with the show. You can call the show, 615-737-1045. The news today, Nashville has submitted a bid for a WNBA expansion franchise. Long play. League is talking about 2028 by the time they want all of these 4 planned expansion teams or proposed expansion teams to start playing. So it's not like it's going to happen next basketball season. But this comment from Brandon, I think, is interesting. We have a very male audience. Yes?
It's sports radio.
What? Well, okay. But what are we? We are 3 largely Caucasian males. Like that, we are not necessarily a diverse show with diversity of thought where it relates to other people that are interested in sports, specifically the female portion of the audience. Now, we do have great listeners, obviously. We have a lot of people who are sports fans in this city, but Brandon says something that I don't think is indicative of the interest in women's college basketball, or women's basketball in general, whether it be college or pro. Brandon says, I think y'all are really overhyping women's basketball. Nobody wants to watch layups. There are female sports fans everywhere. There are aspiring female athletes everywhere. I understand that a lot of these things are run through the male prism, and it's hard to remove yourself from that viewpoint because that's your viewpoint, and that's what your entire existence is based around. I know. But there are plenty of female sports fans that would have interest in watching and taking their kids who want to play basketball, soccer, aspiring female athletes to see professional women's athletes in the city of Nashville and say, yeah, that's something that I would aspire to. That's cool. That's fun. I understand that there is a smaller portion of the audience, and specifically a smaller portion of our audience that probably thinks that way. But how many of you in the audience have daughters that would like to go see professional women's basketball? I'm not necessarily talking about it for you, though you may take them and enjoy the experience should this happen. But don't just, again, it's hard to remove it from your own viewpoint, but I think that's a very baseline viewpoint of, well, I don't want to watch women's college basketball. What do I care?
Yeah, no. Those are the easiest to ignore. People will want to watch. People are watching right now.
Well, they're not the easiest to ignore because I think they're really,
No, they are. When I see...
Oh, please, you who argues with people in the comments all the time.
I like to have fun in the chat.
Even remotely, somebody says, Lucas, you said something months ago. I literally never said that. He'll get in there and argue with people about his positions that he doesn't even remember.
It's fun. We like to have fun here.
Yeah.
But saying nobody cares about the WNBA, nobody wants to watch layup is literally the easiest part of the discourse to ignore because both are not factual. If anything, the last 2 years alone have showed us that. So, yes, it is easy to ignore for me. Absolutely.
Do you want to be somebody on the front end of this who's like, oh, well, nobody's been watching it, but people are starting to watch it at a much larger consumption rate. So would you not want to be a part of the movement, for lack of a better term, although I guess you could call it that, of people's interest in the sport and have one of these exciting franchises in a town that's built for stars.
Same thing was said about soccer here. Ian Ayer tells the story all the time, Nashville SC CEO, of getting in an Uber. He was flying into Nashville for a meeting about building out this bid to expand Major League Soccer to Nashville. And he was making conversation with his Uber driver about what he was doing in town, why he was here. And he said, I'm part of a group that's leading for an expansion team in Major League Soccer. And the Uber driver said, okay, yeah, soccer. Yeah, that's not going to work. He tells that story all the time. And that was a very, very common opinion here. That place is rocking. Season starts February 22nd. Geodis Park is going to be a packed house for the season opener against New England Revolution. And we had one of the highlights in Nashville sports history when Lionel Messi and Inter Miami came here for that Leagues Cup final. The buzz was palpable, and it has worked. And we're about to start year 6. I can't believe it's year 6, but we're about to start year 6 in the history of Nashville SC.
For God's sakes, they said that about hockey
as
here.
they try to take another step. They said that about hockey as well.
Like there's always this resistance on the front end to whatever it is. And I know that the Preds went through a spotty time and that there had to be a whole campaign. I know the zone was a big part of that. George Plaster, a big part of that on essentially saving the team. Nashville SC, I think, has had a pretty smooth transition because until this season, all they do is win. All they do is make the postseason. That's a great way to continue sustained interest and build a fan base over a period of time. And also, it's a global sport that there's an audience for. And if you put something out there, people will eventually gravitate towards it.
Think about when the Indiana Fever come to town.
They have to move to bigger venues because of the wave of interest in her around the country. It's not just about the team that you would have here. It's also about who you'd be bringing in and the revenue that it would cause for the city. Caitlin Clark legitimately moves the needle in a way that not a lot of athletes do.
So that's why that's easy to ignore for me. Nobody cares. No one will watch. Nobody wants to watch layups. Well, you're wrong. You're factually wrong.
Like there's evidence to the contrary of how much this sport has continued to grow year over year over year. And again, the jet fuel that is the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. 615-737-1045 is how you get in there. Ron wants to talk about the potential, well, not the potential bid, but the potential of a WNBA franchise in Nashville. Hey, Ron.
How you doing, fellas?
Good.
I think it's a great idea, and I predicted just like 5 years ago the WNBA would be here. It's great because this right here is the it city. I can almost guarantee you, Buck, it's gonna work. I put my house on it.
Well, don't.
That's all I have to say there.
Maybe buy season tickets. Maybe don't put the house up for the bet. You could start there.
What's the hit rate right now? We just mentioned it of sports that were never going to work in the South. So far, 2 for 2, 100%.
I mean, honestly, the NFL was a tough thing to sell here because it's a college football region.
Soccer and hockey has worked to great levels of success here. So the idea that basketball won't, come on.
Especially women's basketball. Like what Candace Parker is saying is so. This is one of the most inspirational, foundational parts of women's basketball anywhere. This state, Pat Summitt, naming it the Summit. Like these things are all done intentionally, of course. Like they're not dopes. They're going to try and make this the most marketable product and viable pitch that they can. And there's a million reasons why it would work here. It's nobody's making you pick between, because I do think people have a little bit of a reaction of, well, they're making us pick between women's basketball and baseball. No, nobody's making you do that. You could still be a baseball fan in the city.
Who's saying that?
I don't know. There seems to be like that reaction every time you talk about one thing or the other. Like people will start to compare them too. These are not comparable situations. This is one thing that makes a lot of sense versus another thing that doesn't really have any momentum in that right direction, even though people have been working on the effort to get like I don't want to discredit the Music City baseball team, the Nashville Stars people, because they've been working tirelessly to make this place viable for somebody who might come in here and say, I can make baseball, I can fund baseball here. But the biggest issue is they've been putting together this mobilization process and still awaiting that legitimate financing to put it over the top.
Bill Haslam got into ownership, decided he liked it, and wanted to pursue another project. He chose women's basketball. I think he did that for a reason.
Smart play.
We have Alex Doherty coming on at 11 today, and I'll be fascinated to hear his insight on just what that process of taking over the Preds has been like for Haslam and why Alex thinks that has led to this. Nashville pursuing a WNBA team for 2028.
Jeffrey Simmons is back in the Pro Bowl. It's an interesting conversation ahead. How did you phrase the poll?
It was, you phrased it because it came from your Twitter account. So just not sure why you're trying to do it like that. But the poll that you wrote was, do you think Jeffrey Simmons had a Pro Bowl worthy season? Yes or no?
We could talk about it coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Thanks for hanging out, stopping by. Jeff Simmons is going to stop by the Pro Bowl. Sounds like he was named as a replacement for Nnamdi Madubuike, the Ravens defensive lineman, who is not going to participate in the Pro Bowl due to an injury. It's going to be Jeff's third Pro Bowl appearance. He was last a Pro Bowl nominee, or rather not a nominee, but a selection in 2022. So he's an alternate, but still. Jeff didn't have a bad season by any stretch of the imagination. Among defensive linemen, and I know there's a million different ways that you can measure the quality of a defensive lineman, right? You could look at tackles for loss. You could look at run stuffs. You could look at pass rush, interior edge. But let's just make it about interior defensive linemen this year. Where would you say that Jeff Simmons, I've got it in front of me, ranked in terms of pass rushing productivity, pass rushing pressures among interior, not edge guys, interior defensive linemen? So like Jalen Carter, Deron Payne, Chris Jones, Javon Kinlaw, these kind of guys.
Just tell me.
He's 16th among just interior defensive linemen. He got 236 total pressures on the year. Jalen Carter had the most, 605.
It's a lot.
God. And I understand that there was reasons in the draft why Jalen Carter dropped, and there's no way to project how the personality situations or the previous mistakes are going to impact what kind of person this will become in the future. But Jalen Carter is a football player. Huge problem. Huge problem.
Yeah, Jeff had 5 sacks, 3 batted balls. I mean,
Zach Allen had the most sacks of an interior defensive lineman last year. If Jeff had 5, Zach Allen had 14.
Yeah, and 11 TFLs for Jeff, which was second to his career high of 12 in 2021.
So again, it's not a bad season. And how did you phrase the poll? Pro Bowl worthy? Pro Bowl worthy season?
You wrote it. Why are you doing this? Pro Bowl worthy season. And so far,
at some point that joke is going to run out of gas.
I know. I'm waiting for you to stop making it. But so far, 70% early on are saying no. They don't think he had a Pro Bowl worthy season.
Okay, but what is a Pro Bowl worthy season? Because that, I think, is worth debating.
Yeah.
He's an alternate, so he wasn't initially selected.
Yeah, Madubuike's hurt.
So if he's an alternate to the Pro Bowl, which is already questionable in its legitimacy, other than their financial benefits, and television exposure is good for these guys, and it's a fun time, right? Like, I know Ben Jones was excited, even though it's not like a Pro Bowl football game anymore. I know Ben Jones was excited to go to his first Pro Bowl because he got to go with Derek, and that means something. There's some level of camaraderie, and it goes on your resume.
Oh, who was the Colts player basically campaigning to make the Pro Bowl?
The Colts player?
Yeah, he had.
I don't know.
He had his podcast, and he wouldn't shut up about wanting to be a Pro Bowl selection.
Not the linebacker, Zaire Franklin?
Zaire Franklin, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Was he?
Yeah, he was like publicly.
No. But did it work? Did he get in the Pro Bowl?
I don't know if he got named a Pro Bowler.
His podcast, everybody has a damn podcast.
Yeah, he did. He had a good season.
Okay. Well, that's the one that Jeff Simmons told him he'd see him in Cabo. Yeah, so that's where things are at right now. But it matters. What do we bring up most often when we're talking about players and their resume? Pro Bowls and All Pros, right? All Pro selections, Pro Bowl selections, 3-time Pro Bowler, 5-time Pro Bowler, 1-time Pro Bowler, whatever the case may be. So it means something, and Jeff is a quality player. How much better does Jeff Simmons need to be to get this defensive line to a place where you're looking at it as one of the more impressive units? I mean, there was a period of time where the Titans were looked at as one of the best defensive lines in football, when Danico Autry and Jeff Simmons, Harold Landry, Jarrell Casey obviously was there in that 19 season. That was like the last good season that Jarrell had before he went to Denver, and I think he only played in 2 games in Denver before things really tailed off there. But they've had good defensive line groups before. It's just been a while since they've been able to say that, and they're coming off a year where they very rarely bothered the quarterback.
Yeah, they struggled to affect the quarterback, and that had a lot more to do with the overall pass rushing group as opposed to just Jeff, right? I mean,
sure. But Jeff is supposed to be the engine here.
I mean, Jeff this past year was the type of player that would have Titans fans wanting more and complaining he wasn't affecting games enough, because we've seen Jeff be an absolute game wrecker in his career. And then that week, Brian Baldinger would be putting out a Baldy breakdown about just how dominant Jeffrey Simmons is, right? But it's not showing up on the stat sheet because of, he's not getting to the quarterback, even if he's tossing a guard like a rag doll. So the interior defensive lineman can be one of the hardest positions for the layman to judge, I feel like, because you can be dominating your one-on-one matchup, and the play can be running away from you, or you can be losing by multiple scores in the second half, which the Titans were multiple times this season, and the team isn't necessarily getting into drop-back pass mode and giving you a lot of those opportunities. I'm not saying that Jeff was perfectly fine. He was the same Jeff that we saw in 2021. What do we think was Jeff at the peak of his powers? I mean, it was the half against the Rams. It's the best single-game performance I can remember. The playoff game against the Bengals, probably.
He was an unholy terror.
For sure. That's the best performance of his career, right? And the most meaningful moment in the divisional round.
Ended up, people are only going to remember it because the Titans lost that game.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was his career high in sacks, was that 2021 season. So he wasn't the Jeffrey Simmons that we knew in 2021. But Jeffrey Simmons can still be a dominant player, and the Titans need to do more around him.
They just need more juice.
Yeah.
Like Jeff and Harold, again, are quality players, but they are also not enough in today's NFL. They are not enough just themselves. If that's the star power, quote unquote, that you're walking into your weekly matchup with, you're going to get a pressure rate that looks the way that the Titans did this season, because, again, those two were also on the roster on the worst NFL third down defense in the history of the sport since the merger. Like, they need additional pieces up front. Doesn't mean that they're bad players. Doesn't mean that you should trade them. Doesn't mean that you can't continue to build with them as a part of the solution here. Because right now you're looking at Sweat, Jeff, Harold, and Arden as the primary parties in this. That is the bones of something that could be good if you get a legitimate star player in there to set this thing over the top. And Jeff also provides value as far as stopping the run. Like, he can help force quarterbacks into obvious passing situations for a defense to just be able to tee off after the fact. He had a run stop percentage this year of 10.2. It was good for 13th among qualified just defensive linemen this year. Sebastian Joseph Day, ironically enough, had a slightly higher run stop percentage, 10.4. And there's a couple of different names at the top of the list that you may know. Some guys who are always up there, like Cam Hayward and Calais Campbell. Like, it's more than just getting after the passer, even though interior pass rush, the value of it has never been greater than in today's NFL.
Every year, you have guys that get to the Pro Bowl as an alternate, or because you got to go to the third or fourth option down the list, whether it be injury or otherwise. And you're like, come on, really? Jeff's not one of those guys. Drake May is. Drake May is that guy this year. Drake May, yes, is a Pro Bowler. That is because I believe Josh Allen pulled out, right?
It goes from the drop-off is Josh Allen to Drake May?
I mean, I don't know how many quarterbacks they had to go through to get to Drake May.
Okay.
But Drake May is a Pro Bowler.
Drake May's like, yeah, I'll go.
Oh, he replaced Lamar. That's what it is.
Oh, okay.
He replaced Lamar.
The drop-off between the quarterbacks is Lamar to Drake May.
Do you still get that on your resume?
Kind of crazy.
If you have to pull out due to injury, or if you just decide not to participate. Because Lamar has not participated in a Pro Bowl since 2019.
But he's been selected.
He's been selected 4 times. So I assume, surely, if you're selected to it, then you still get that on your resume.
I would think so, but that's an interesting question.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, that would make sense.
But the person that replaces you also gets it.
All right. So all that to say, because I think people look at Jeffrey Simmons and say, why aren't you better? Why aren't you Chris Jones? Why aren't you Dexter Lawrence? Why aren't you Quinnen Williams? And I get that initial impulse. But in reality, there's only 2 or 3 of those guys in any given year for a reason. For a while, it was just Chris Jones and Aaron Donald, and everybody else was in a different category. From my perspective, Jeff's a really good player. He's an above-average player. It doesn't mean that you can't get him more help to make him the best version of himself, and that's what you're trying to do. Because it's not just about the quarterback, even though the quarterback's the most important position. There are so many things on this roster that need outright starting help or supplementary talent. The defensive line unit is something that needs outright starting help and supplementary talent. That's kind of where they're at heading into this offseason. A lot of needs to address. They're going to have to figure out the most efficient way to get as many of them done as humanly possible. Coming up next, Alex Doherty covers the Preds for the Tennessean. We haven't done a Preds check-in for a while. I know they're starting to slide a little bit after having, 5 straight wins? Not too many weeks ago, so we'll check in on the hockey team with Alex Doherty coming up next.
11 o'clock, good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. Breaking news this morning, Nashville has put in a bid for a WNBA expansion franchise called the Tennessee Summit. The ownership group is led by former Governor Bill Haslam, his wife Chrissy, and it includes former Lady Vol Candace Parker, Peyton Manning, and Tim McGraw and Faith Hill. The bid is with a target date of 2028, and the team would play in Bridgestone Arena. Titans defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons was named to the Pro Bowl roster on Wednesday as a replacement for Ravens defensive tackle Nnamdi Madubuike. Simmons had 5 sacks in the 2024 season. It is the 3rd Pro Bowl of his career. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
So we haven't checked in on the Nashville Predators in a while. Worth doing so. We still have a good bit of time before the NHL trade deadline on March the 7th, and the Predators are a curiosity at this point in time. They had a little bit of a run, 5 straight wins, and since then they've kind of started to regress again. We're going to get the latest from Alex Doherty of the Tennessean, who joins us now, who covers the Nashville Predators. And as always, good to check in from time to time. Alex, when the Preds were showing signs of life, they were still having struggles with the goaltending situation, right? Like, it's not like they were their offense was really clicking at a high level, but the UC Saros proposition has been not ideal all year long. What can you kind of tell us about him to start with, and how big of a problem is it for this team moving forward as they try to figure out whether they want to buy or sell?
Yeah, the bigger issue for the Predators all season has been offense. I mean, that has been they've had the league's worst offense for most of the season. But then in January, they started scoring again, and they were actually among the league's best scoring offenses in the league in the month of January so far. But then, like you said, the goaltending is all of a sudden a big question. UC Saros has had a bad season. He's had, now you could call it a season and a half of bad goaltending play. It's kind of curious why. I mean, there's nothing really obvious. He did have a slight injury at the beginning of the season that kept him out of the season opener, but he by all accounts, he's healthy, and he's not, he's playing a lot of games like he normally does, but, he's still only 29, about to be 30. That shouldn't be an issue. And now he's about to get a pay raise for 8 years, and locked in at 8 years at a $2.7 million pay raise. So he's going to be making $7.7 million for the next 8 years. And he now has almost 2 seasons worth of pretty poor play. I mean, pretty below performance, I would say. So it's very alarming. I would say there's no other way to describe it. Like, it's not good right now. And it's not a matter of him being, he's doing the things that he normally does. He's just a little slow. He's not reacting fast enough to things. It's like he's not tracking the puck well. He's still moving pretty well. It doesn't look like he's hampered by anything, but it's just, he's not been effective in net. So that's been a big problem, along with all the other issues with the Predators this year, with the lack of scoring and age catching up to a lot of these players. There's just, he's yet another problem that they didn't foresee going into the season.
Alex Doherty of the Tennessean here with us on 104.5 The Zone, talking a little Preds. Preds fall last night 3-1 to the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, so back-to-back losses after the 5-game win streak. I mean, where were you on the win streak, Alex? Were you pretty hesitant to buy into an actual turnaround? Even after 5 straight wins, it still felt like they were basement dwelling, and there's still such a gap to be made up. Did the win streak have you feeling any differently about the direction overall of this season?
Not really. No, I mean, it was like finally some goals started to fall. They scored 13 goals against the San Jose Sharks, which are the worst team in the league. So it's like, all right. I mean, you scored 13 goals. You also gave up 10. against that team. So it's not like you were just completely dominating out there. They had a really nice win against the Minnesota Wild. That was a really fun night with fight night in Nashville with 3 different fights and Zach LaRue getting in the heads of all the Minnesota Wild players. They beat that team. That was a good win. And then the Vegas win was good. But, they lose to Anaheim. They lose last night to Vancouver. It doesn't feel like anything's really changed. Their playoff odds have been at or below 5% for a couple months now. They still have a higher chance of getting the number 1 overall draft pick than they do of making the playoffs. And that's not changed. And as long as that, at this point, you're looking at straight up miracle to make the playoffs. I mean, they have to win like 28 of their final 33 games or something. It's not, maybe not that drastic, but it's something like that. They have to go on a 80% win streak the rest of the way. And I just don't see it happening.
What's the vibe on Barry Trotz right now?
Well, I think Barry has learned a lot over the last couple of years. I talked to the ownership group, including Sean Henry and Bill Haslam, which we can talk about that news today. I think that's a pretty exciting thing that's going on with the WNBA franchise, if you want to. But I think they are very much. I think the quote was, "We are as much on board with Barry Trotz as the general manager as we were the day we hired him." Is basically what they told me. So nothing's really changed from the ownership perspective. They love Barry. They think he's great for the team. They think he's doing a good job. I think he's learned a lot of very valuable lessons over the last nearly 2 years being in the job. Number 1, you cannot go buy a team in free agency and expect it to be a cup contending team. You can't do it in any sport, let alone hockey. So he spent $100 million on 3 different players on July 1, and now has a team that's going to miss the playoffs almost definitely. So he's learned that. He's also learned that you really need to consider being bad for a little bit in order to get a good draft pick. I think he's probably also learned you got to sell pieces when they're available to be sold. He should have sold Alex Carrier at the deadline last year. He probably should have chosen to keep Askarov instead of sign Saros to a long-term deal. So, these are big decisions that he's just, having to learn as we go. Where's it going to be in 5 years? In 5 years, is the team going to be back in the hunt and be competitive again? That remains to be seen. I just think that, just like with David Poile, where it took a long time for David Poile to find a way to make a competitive team, they're going to be very patient with Barry Trotz. So I don't see any issues there right now.
Is that just because of what he means to the organization, or is there reason to believe that these lessons are going to take hold? Because it's not very often that you get to you spend that kind of money for an organization. You put together a roster that people expect to be competing at the top of the standings. You fall so spectacularly short and still get that expressed. Yeah, we love Barry. He's doing a great job when the product on the ice is, me and Lucas were looking at each other, shaking our heads, talking about buying a team because I'm looking down the road at another one that tried to do that. And basically they're mirror images of one another right now, except one, obviously was thought to be competing for a Stanley Cup and the other one was just trying to get back into the postseason picture.
Yeah, the money is something that people look at and say, wow, he spent all that money and it went nowhere. I actually don't think Bill Haslam cares too much about the money spent. It's more about is he managing things properly, which is still in question. And they would say it's not like he traded a bunch of draft picks to get Steven Stamkos. He just paid him a lot of money. And the team has said multiple times they're never going to let a checkbook get in the way of trying to create something good. So I think the fact that he still has 3 first-round picks in this year. He's got a ton of really good prospects. Some really exciting ones coming into the team next year. And he's already seen some ability for the younger players. There's some players on the team now who are not household names, but will be soon, like Adam Wilsby and I think Nick Blankenberg and Fedor Svechkov. These guys are already getting a lot of valuable minutes this year in what is basically a thrown away year. So I think that the comfort in Barry Trotz is they trust his hockey mind. They trust that he can develop, the future of the team. If maybe the caveat being let's figure out how to spend our money a little bit more wisely in the future. I think that would be kind of the main thing. But honestly, as you saw today with the news with Bill Haslam, like there's no shortage of money over there. They're fine spending all kinds of money on this team and on other things too. So
yeah, it's just both of these teams, Titans and Preds. One has the number 1 overall pick, the other one vying for a top pick. It's just very, very disappointing all around in the local pro sports scene. But to your point, there is some exciting news on the pro sports scene. To some effect, Alex Doherty of the Tennessean here with us on 104.5 The Zone.
Yeah, does Bill Haslam pursue a WNBA expansion bid if he does not get involved with the Nashville Predators, in your opinion?
I think that's absolutely a huge part of it. When I talked to him about it, he talked a lot about his partnership with Barry Trotz, with Sean Henry, and the rest of the Predators owners, about how the sort of the community aspect of Nashville. I mean, because keep in mind, like, prior to 3 years ago, Bill Haslam really wasn't a Nashville guy, right? I mean, he's a Knoxville guy, and he's a Tennessee guy, and moving to becoming more Nashville focused with the Predators, and how fluid it's been. I mean, he's been like he's chairman of the ownership group. He's a big part of the decision making there. That played a huge role, and I think, he thinks that the WNBA franchise is going to be also an investment opportunity. I mean, I guess I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know how that works, but I guess it is. I know the Predators have been a good buy for him. I mean, they're basically a $1 billion franchise now. And I think he thinks that the WNBA will be that way too. And I think he also likes the idea that they will, if the league awards a franchise to him or to the city, they will play in Bridgestone Arena. They will be co-tenants. That would be a partnership for the future. And, the idea of the seasons don't match up exactly, but there's a little bit of crossover. So you have, the end of the Predators playoff leads into the WNBA, and the end of the WNBA season leads into the Predators' first, next season. They wouldn't have any scheduling issues in terms of practice because as part of the bid, they're going to build a practice facility somewhere in Nashville. So yeah, I think it would be a good match. And then obviously the questions about what does this lead down the road? A baseball team, maybe. That he avoided that question pretty clearly. But I don't think there's any way that that this WNBA team, if they get it, wouldn't be some sort of a success. I mean, the name alone, I think, is just like that's a brand, right? I mean, as soon as you hear that name, you think. You know exactly what it's about. You know exactly it's about Pat Summitt. It's about Tennessee basketball. It's about Lady Vols. It's about Candace Parker being involved as well. That's a brand, and I think that would stick out. That would help sell it. That's going to help sell it no matter what else happens on the court. It's just going to be a good partnership, I think. So it's pretty exciting. I think it's a really good move.
Real quick, Alex, Titans GM is Borgonzi, Preds GM is Barry. Were there any alliterations last offseason? Let Barry bake, maybe Chef Barry T? I'm just asking for a friend.
I think there was a lot of let Trotz cook. I don't think there was any alliteration involved.
Well, that's not creative.
That has dropped off a little bit. I think it's more about like what exactly is Barry doing?
Have to put on a t-shirt. Huh?
That's not even a slogan. That's just just a question.
No. It's a reasonable question.
No, we'll let the Titans fan base come up with all the clever slogans. The Predators fan base is. I think they're just confused about what happened this season at this point. So no, I don't have anything good, any witty slogans to offer you. I'm sorry.
Neither does he. That's why he's trying to outsource it. Alex Doherty of the Tennessean, kind enough to make some time. Thank you, buddy.
Absolutely. Y'all take it easy.
The parallels are difficult to ignore.
They're awful.
Hard to build a team in free agency.
I mean, come on. Two of them at the same time?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's unacceptable. Just unacceptable. Are you surprised by that? That it's just kind of like, yeah, Barry's doing a great job. It just that it didn't go to plan.
It is. The parallels are eerie to Rand Carthon, where every move he made celebrated. Right, got the fan base,
beloved person,
so
great
excited,
relationship guy, all the things.
Well, and the context of the hirings obviously entirely different. Barry with his connection to this city and this franchise,
sure. And Alex pointing out correctly that Barry Trotz didn't trade away draft capital in a lot of these moves, and Rand Carthon did for Will Levis and for L'Jarius Sneed.
Yeah, didn't trade the farm, but yeah, they have 2 picks in the top 100 in this upcoming draft because of the Snead trade. So, yeah, just those parallels it's crazy how similar it is.
The chat is still arguing about the interest level in women's basketball and arguing with somebody named Chase on YouTube. She says, Chase saying the WNBA isn't exciting, but he presumably watches the worst NFL team in the country. The Titans aren't fun to watch either. You can't tell me the Liberty aren't exciting to watch. It just depends on what your perspective is on that. But yeah, it's a fair point. If you're going to suffer through Titans games and say that the WNBA isn't exciting, you probably need to reevaluate at that point in time. 615-737-1045. The number. Speaking of the Titans, how'd they put their front office together? What's it look like? It's got a lot of new pieces. We'll talk about it coming up next. There are so many misconceptions out there about treating erectile dysfunction. The Tennessee Men's Clinic is there to debunk those for you if you've had any issues at all. Because if you go through that, it's natural. Your body changes over a period of time. And if you are somebody who's been taking pills to keep things going and the pills eventually stop working, well, you may have questions and you may seek help. Make sure you speak with the Tennessee Men's Clinic first and foremost because they specialize in men's sexual health issues. It's all they do. It makes them the experts in the field. They have access to multiple protocols and options to treat ED based on your specific needs and what's going on in your body. Don't trust your health to an online pharmacy and don't feel like you're out of options. We want you to understand every option available for you when it comes to ED treatment. The Tennessee Men's Clinic protocols are patient-centered and customized to your needs. They have everything from low testosterone ED treatments that increase size and stamina and everything else in between. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location or call them 615-208-9090. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Lunchtime almost here. I wouldn't know because I do the show with I don't even, would we describe Lucas as having an eating disorder? Like, he's not depriving himself of food.
Now making fun of eating disorders.
God knows, but...
Yeah, that's kind of a crazy turn. I'm not going to lie.
Why don't you take it easy over there, bud?
I don't know. I think
First going at people with dyslexia and now eating disorders.
For dyslexia from my Twitter account, not specifically targeting a group of people.
Buddy, if you can't spell,
stop
don't
while you're
blame
ahead.
Lucas.
Stop while you're ahead.
Gaslighting is insane.
I want to know, is there a eating disorder that describes habitual eaters? Because this man has not stopped shoveling things into his face for 3 hours of radio.
You also can't be trusted because you'll see someone eat like a chicken tender. That's disgusting. How could you eat that? Like you'll see something that's just perfectly normal. That's just general humans. Like someone will eat a French fry. Like that is just so disgusting. I don't know how you can't eat that.
In the wild, I do that while we're doing the radio show as you're spitting whatever shrapnel of the hot fries that are in your face onto the microphone that people have to use after you.
I haven't had the hot fries in a while.
Yes, Blaine brings it up regularly. Blaine will come in here and know that Lucas has been in his chair because there's crumbs. He's like a child. There's just crumbs everywhere.
It's happened before. But why don't you calm down on the eating disorder stuff?
I just want to know if there is a kind of eating disorder specific to somebody who eats just constantly that way that we could potentially diagnose Lucas with on air. Perhaps we'll call an expert. Expertise is what the Titans are trying to add to their front office. This is a significant pivot from the organization in one specific way. What was a common denominator among the people that they have hired over the course of the last 2 off seasons to get to the point where they reshuffled the deck yet again, specifically with the front office? They had a first-year general manager doing the job for the first time. Then they hired a first-year head coach who's doing the job for the first time, who then hired a first-time offensive coordinator, first-time defensive coordinator, and first-time special teams coach. Now, there's obviously a great deal of experience on the coaching staff, people like Tracy Rocker, Frank Bush, Steve Jackson, all of it, Bill Callahan. Like, it's not like they are completely devoid of experience on the coaching staff, but the people at the very top making the decisions were fairly inexperienced. They corrected that course on the special teams front. With John Fossil, they bring in one of the most proven commodities in his respective area to shore up that front. And they're doing a lot of work on the front office side of things to continue to add more experience, more perspectives from a variety of different people. Now, we know that they've hired Dave Ziegler as an assistant general manager, former Raiders GM, more well-known, I think, for his time working as a Patriots executive than as the Raiders GM, but he was an NFL general manager for a period of time. Reggie McKenzie was an NFL general manager and executive of the year, as a matter of fact, both for the same organization that we talked about, one for the Oakland Raiders, the other for the Las Vegas Raiders. They have a couple of people on staff, including A.J. Highsmith, who was brought in here last year as the director of scouting and who was seen as a substantial hire for this organization. He had connections specifically with Rand Carthon, and there's no reason to believe that he would not continue in that role under Mike Borgonzi, though, of course, that remains to be seen, and they have to get through this draft process first before they can really start to make whatever adjustments they feel necessary to the rest of the front office / scouting structure. So right now at the top of the list, it's Brinker as the president of football operations. If we're just doing the front office hierarchy.
The pecking order.
The pecking order. Brinker as the president of football ops. Final say, all football matters. Then Mike Borgonzi, new general manager. Dave Ziegler. Reggie McKenzie is in a senior scouting role. So I don't know if that puts him above or below people like A.J. Highsmith, who's the director of scouting, and John Salge, who is the director of college scouting. But McKenzie obviously comes with a wealth of experience from a variety of different organizations. Most recently, I think he had 5 or 6 seasons with the Miami Dolphins doing a similar job. So.
And now they've added Scott Cohen, who was.
Well, he's been there.
They
but promoted him to a full-time
not
role.
in the role that he will be. He is the director of football strategy. He was in Baltimore for several years, he was a coaching consultant. He was a senior opponent analyst. And most recently, from 2019 to 2023, he was the director of football research in Baltimore. And then he came here to, in
an auxiliary role.
In a consulting role.
He's been since promoted. And that's a part of the equation as well, though that's more directly on the field as opposed to the front office structure that's tasked with personnel acquisition. It's a lot of different opinions. It's a lot of different perspectives. It's just a lot of different leadership parts of this organizational chart that they've been trying to put together, and we'll see if this one works as opposed to what the last construct was, which was Brinker, most recently, Brinker above Carthon, then Anthony Robinson, A.J. Highsmith and John Salke were both here as well.
But Carthon with final roster say.
Yes. So, if you add in the coaching staff, we're talking about how many people? 8 to 9 strong voices who have some level of influence with the organization, helping to make decisions. Because I think people are going to look at these as separate entities, and they very much tried to describe, no, when we go in there, the titles don't matter. We're all working towards a common goal. We're trying to get this thing accomplished. And I do think that they benefit from having more, to use a cliche or a generalization, cooks in the kitchen than not. I think more people can help that effort to find more players that may not be on everybody's board, or you may not have detailed scouting reports on one, but you've got somebody else who's really, really watched this guy, really understands how he can fit the system and can present it well to the rest of the group to potentially make an impact on that roster. I do think that there's value there, at least in what they're trying to do. Whether or not they get it accomplished remains to be seen.
Well, most of the best organizations don't have a singular figure like John Robinson was absorbing all of these duties, right? Like we've gotten to know pretty well what the Chiefs front office structure has been like now for the last several years with Borgonzi a part of it. Pretty deep when you look at, for example, John Dorsey's time as general manager and Brett Veach and Mike Borgonzi under him, and a head coach that has significant input, and you could argue final say on the roster, and Andy Reid. A lot of cooks in that kitchen, but like Pete Sweeney said when he joined the show, that's good collaboration. You can't win without good collaboration. What the Titans have had is a bad version of collaboration, parts and pieces that don't fit together, that maybe aren't experienced enough for the role. But it is interesting to get insight on what these people actually do, because most football fans do not know what the job of an assistant general manager is, right? That fair to say? And maybe it's different everywhere. But Zach Lyons sat down with Mike Borgonzi yesterday at the Senior Bowl and asked him about what Dave Ziegler's role exactly will be.
Yeah, so, he's going to be a sounding board and help me out in a lot of different areas, starting with the personnel department, the college, the pro. He's going to help me, align the staff and, different departments in the building. He's been in that chair before, so guys like Reggie, too. So I think, they're smart people, First of all, they're very good people, too. You want to work with good people that are smart and detailed. He's going to be a big help for me, a big sounding board, just in terms of managing every department.
I think people see that Dave Ziegler got hired by the Titans front office, that Reggie McKenzie got hired by the Titans front office, and they go and look up their drafts with the Raiders.
Yeah.
And say, well, I don't want that guy. But how many head coaches or how many successful coordinators do we see move up to be a head coach, done workout, and then they move back down and they continue having success as a coordinator, right? I don't know if that's what's going to happen here with Dave Ziegler and Reggie McKenzie. Obviously, he's a well-respected guy throughout the entirety of the league. But I will say, when Ran Carthon got fired and the Titans put out all of those statements about Chad Brinker being the tiebreaker and having final say, the immediate reaction was, oh, Titans GM job's fake, right? Well, you're hiring a director of scouting. Why would anybody want this job? With the recent history of front office turnover and the fact that you don't even have that final roster say, that goes to Chad Brinker. And then the Titans hired the best general manager candidate on the market and brought in 2 former general managers to be on the staff within the front office. Is it fair to say the Titans' job to work in the Titans front office is a much more attractive proposition than what we gave it credit for after Ran Carthon was fired?
than what we gave it credit for.
Which was nothing.
Certainly. But I don't feel any differently about the position at the time because they had created that situation unto themselves.
Absolutely. The process to getting there was flawed. We understand that.
They created a sound and efficient process in trying to correct that pattern of behavior that had put them in that hole. But I don't think, I think it's fine to adjust the position after the fact with new information at our disposal and frankly at their disposal because they went into it. Misinformed is probably not the right word. Misguided, probably the better term to use in how they wanted to put it together. Maybe they had the vision of what this was supposed to look like and they did it with the wrong people initially. Since then, they've given themselves a couple of mulligans on that front and their third time around, they feel convicted that they're going to get it right. Their process seems to have been rewarding to the effect of making it an attractive job. But it still doesn't ignore the fact that they made critical mistakes en route to getting there. Now, will it matter if they get it right? Of course not. Every organization goes through some level of cycle to this effect where you make mistakes or you have sustained success for a period of time, but all of a sudden you lose that edge and things start to tail off. And change can be good for organizations over a period of time, whether it be coaching or vision from the front office, and you make those necessary adjustments and you try to cycle back up again. So what they're trying to do is after stalling out for arguably 3 straight seasons, they're trying to cycle this thing back up again, and they seem to be doing it with quality people.
We talk about how they've been chasing the tackle position since the Isaiah Wilson pick.
Since the dawn of time, right? It feels like.
Well, since the Isaiah Wilson pick, which was 5 years ago.
It's
a significant amount of time in the NFL.
It's a long time.
But it's felt that way in the last couple of years with the front office when the Carthon-Vrabel marriage just did not work and probably never was going to work. They have kind of chased a little bit since then, right? Fired Vrabel, brought in Callahan, tried to make that work. Okay, feels like Carthon's not a good fit in this front office. Brinker gets promoted, replace Rand Carthon, and now they're really building out this front office in earnest. Brian Callahan may not be on the same timeline as Mike Borgonzi, but I do feel like we're in a place where the front office is on the same timeline, where Chad Brinker, like he said to you guys, is as front-facing as ever. And that's true, even if he's not speaking with the media. They're out there saying he's got final say publicly. So he is as front-facing in that regard as he has ever been. And he and Mike Borgonzi have brought in Ziegler and McKenzie together. So it feels like the front office is on the same timeline. What that patience looks like for Brian Callahan as they preach patience over panic, we don't know. Will they practice that? We don't know. That's what we need to find out.
Well, it depends on who you want them to have patience with. I agree with what you're saying about the front office being on the same timeline. The question becomes, okay, and this may differ from fan base to owner to player to coach, but what do you value more in an NFL organization? Do you value an NFL organization that is centered around their front office, and their front office being the point of stability to guide you through multiple iterations of your football team, or are you going to make your organization primarily centered around the coach, which they decided that they didn't want to do with the direction that they felt things were heading with Vrabel. So they moved in a different direction, and now they seem most focused around the infrastructure of the front office. And I'm not going to say that Callahan's like not a part of that. He's clearly a part of the equation, but it's never felt like there's less, or at least in the last, let's say, decade of them doing this, it feels like the coach is the lesser emphasized part of that. Even if the coach has a role to play. I'm not saying that Brian Callahan's not important here. You need a quality head coaching candidate.
For sure. And that role could grow with success, right? That was my biggest, I think where you and I ultimately differ is you believe that in that pivot point, they should have given more to Mike Vrabel, correct? They should have given more to Mike Vrabel in terms of what he was asking for.
I think yes, because if his advice was let's bring Rand Carthon in as an assistant general manager and not the guy right out of the gate because there are existing protocols in place here and this will cause this organization, he looks right about that today. I have no idea whether he would have gotten it right or not, but based on the trajectory that they were heading and that they had, in not so many words, committed to at the time, they reversed course. And they suffered for it after the fact.
Where I disagree with you is I don't think Mike Vrabel did anything to earn more control of the roster. At no point do I think Vrabel did anything to say he should continue to have more say in personnel.
I guess from my perspective, it's who's the most qualified football person left. Because John was gone, and they had brought in Rand, and they had Cowden in the front office, and you have a lot of business people with Brinker involved in this as well, but he wasn't quite in the role that they clearly, maybe, I don't know if they envisioned this role for Chad Brinker when they hired him under Rand Carthon, but he's clearly ascended to this role and at least given them a different direction or a different idea of how they can go about this thing. Vrabel, to me, at the time, was the most qualified football person left.
But does that mean you give that person roster control? No. You say they proved Vrabel right. What was proven right?
I said they made him look right. Whether Mike is right or not, the optics of the situation, moving on from Rand Carthon, it doesn't matter because it didn't play out here. He's going to get the opportunity to recreate whatever he wants in New England.
And he's the boss up there. So we're going to find out if Mike Vrabel can build a roster.
We are absolutely going to find out because it's a worse roster than he inherited the first time he became an NFL head coach. They opted not to do that. I'm just saying the way that all of this went down, you looked around and said, okay, they fired the guy that he didn't want to hire in the first place. He gets to look right, even if it doesn't outright prove him right.
What would make him right is, in the end, finding out that, he is capable of building out a good roster with that control over personnel.
And he may be better equipped for that now
in New England
because he went to serve in a personnel, adjacent role. He wasn't a coach in Cleveland. He was essentially shadowing the front office to prepare him for his next role. So it may be. This is why I don't think retreads are a bad thing. There is great learning experience in failing at one of these jobs. Just as there can be learning experience in failing to play the quarterback position correctly in your first shot at it in an NFL organization. And you hope that you have enough talent to get another opportunity to prove yourself, a la a lot of these reclamation projects that we talk about at quarterbacks. I think there's great value in being a retread, even if people see Dan Quinn interviewing for the Titans job and be like, what do I want Dan Quinn for?
He's done a great job. Yeah, we don't really see that with GMs. You're right. But I do think we need to have a healthy skepticism, obviously, with the last. You can't just ignore how they got to this point. But it is worth noting, we went into this GM search saying, well, what about this is a real GM search? I think that's been proven wrong to a degree.
What about this is an attractive job?
Yes.
Based on the parameters, by the way, that they had set.
Yeah.
We read their description of the job.
And now are they continuing to be...
even felt it necessary to pry into that.
Yeah.
They got sufficient details.
Very quick, they were in and out.
To feel justified about that. But from the way all of this was presented, nobody should be faulted for having a healthy skepticism about the way this went down, even if you are pleased with the results.
The question we'll find out with the results is, are they continuing to be misguided in this approach, or is this a more innovative approach than a misguided one? And they have attracted quality candidates with the approach, and we'll see how the results play out.
Should people give them any benefit of the doubt? No, but they can still continue to operate efficiently and continue to prove themselves right in that process.
Blank slate. Those are attractive.
C.J. Stroud versus Bobby Slowick. One party obviously won that, but what are the details on some contentiousness between the former Houston offensive coordinator and the former second overall pick? I'm Buck Risings, 104.5 The Zone.
It is Hot Chicken Week in Nashville, Tennessee. What better way to celebrate than by going to Nashville's best hot chicken? That is, of course, Hattie B's. It's Lucas Panzica. You know I would never lead you astray when it comes to food. So believe me when I say Hattie B's is the best in town. A family-run restaurant that serves up your favorite Southern food, authentic Nashville hot chicken, cooked to order, and pick your favorite side. Southern greens, pimento mac and cheese, bacon, cheese grits. You can't go wrong. If you download the Hattie B's app today, you get a free dessert simply by putting the app on your phone and go ahead and start to build up those rewards. Banana pudding, peach cobbler, go ahead and get it and build up your rewards at Hattie B's. Go to HattieB.com. If you want to skip the line, you can order through the app, order through the website. Super Bowl coming up. Start to think about those plans when you're having people over. Maybe you got to bring something to a Super Bowl party. about a bucket of Hattie B's hot chicken? Hot or not, everything in between, whatever works for you. Bring the heat to your event in Super Bowl Sunday coming up in a week and a half. Any one of their 7 locations, the Factory at Franklin, Lower Broadway, Melrose, Midtown, Nashville West, even the Nashville Airport, and also now at Nissan Stadium. Go to Hattie B's today.
Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Your phone calls are welcome. 615-737-1045. You're going to hear Lance Zierlein of the NFL Network on a bit of a dust-up between C.J. Stroud and Bobby Slowick that may not have directly led to Bobby Slowick's firing, but do give some interesting insight into the dynamics between one of the top quarterbacks, or what was supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks in 2024, and an offensive coordinator whose team won 10 games, and they still decided to move in a different direction. Do that here in just a second. Mark is up next, though.
Hey, gentlemen. Quick question. As far as competition, all right, Cam, Shador, they played for, let's just say, not the SEC. Quick question. Is Dart have the same type of seasons if he played on the same teams, Miami or Colorado.
Jackson Dart, you said?
Nobody knows the answer to that question, really, right? But people knock Cam and they knock Shedeur for saying they didn't really play against anybody. They played against bum teams. But in my opinion, these combines and these senior days and all of this gathering information is not to see if they can play against NFL competition, but see if they can play with NFL competition. Like, if you can make a complete pass, a target pass, I've been hearing a lot that Miro hadn't been throwing perfectly to these NFL-type receivers. So that's my opinion. I'm thinking, like, it doesn't matter where school you went to.
Thanks for the call, Mark. That's 60 seconds. Yeah, the hypotheticals are tough to do that way. Like, drop Jackson Dart onto Colorado's team behind that offensive line. What does he do this year?
No, but it is part of what makes the discussion on these quarterbacks so difficult.
Yeah.
It is, because we've talked about it. What is the best defense Shedeur Sanders faced all season?
BYU, and he got
through 2 picks.
Flung around a little bit.
And they weren't really in that game at any point. What is the best defense?
Well, BYU kept keeping them in that game because that was a very...
Yeah, by score.
Turnover.
But I watched that game. I never felt like Colorado was truly in that game.
No, I'm with you, but I'm saying the only reason that the score was even close is because BYU kept coughing it up too.
Yeah.
And like going for it on fourth downs, ill-advised.
The best defense Cam Ward faced all season. I mean, I'm looking through their schedule. Florida may be the most talented on paper, but we understand how much Florida struggled in week 1 in the first half of the season.
Taken for a ride.
So I don't know. The ACC was weak. It was weak this past year. I don't think Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward faced a top 50 defense.
I guess I don't necessarily understand what he's trying to distinguish there between what he said. He doesn't necessarily think that teams evaluate players based on can they play against NFL competition as opposed to can they play with NFL competition. Are those things not the same? Like how they stack up with NFL competition is how they play against NFL competition, or you could also say that it's like how you play with is how you compete. Not necessarily like how you fit in an NFL offense. I mean, that's also a part of the evaluation. I guess I don't understand what he's trying to distinguish there.
He's talking about playing against NFL competition being a part of the evaluation. Playing against. That's what's important. Blaine has talked about this all the time. His best tape at Ball State, what stood out the most was what he did against Ohio State.
Yeah.
Right? Like when Blaine's watching tape of a guy that...
Could that player on Ball State play for Ohio State?
Right, exactly. So that's a fair question. It's part of what makes this quarterback class and the evaluation of it so difficult.
So that kind of makes the argument against Shedeur and Cam Ward. Right. Because they were seeing a lot less potential NFL competition than was Jackson Dart, even though one of the biggest questions around Jackson Dart is, okay, Lane Kiffin's offense can manufacture a lot of stuff. It's going to be like Tennessee and Hendon Hooker to an extent. Does that translate when Shedeur is playing in a pro-style offense with Pat Shurmur, who's obviously been an NFL coordinator and an NFL head coach?
It's hard to draw those lines this year.
Do you want to hear this Lance Zierlein clip?
Yeah, I haven't heard it yet. So apparently he and Stroud got kind of Bobby Slowick and C.J. Stroud kind of got into it even before Stroud was drafted?
So C.J. Stroud never believed he was going to be drafted by the Houston Texans, and Lance Zierlein explains why.
I'll tell you the whole thing now that Slowick's gone. C.J. Stroud came to visit the Texans, and Bobby Slowick was telling them, okay, they were watching stuff on tape. Now, before I tell you this, when C.J. was at Ohio State, he really didn't talk to the OC at all. He didn't think he knew ball. This coming from somebody who knows C.J. intimately. He didn't think the offense coordinator was very smart. So he would only talk to Ryan Day. Ryan Day was the guy who had to communicate with C.J., which I didn't love that, honestly, before the draft process. And it played into some of my thoughts on C.J. in terms of coachability. What I heard was that he didn't, like, his communication was Ryan Day and not the offense coordinator. Okay, well, that's a little strange, but whatever. He comes into Houston. Bobby Slowick is trying to tell him some stuff, and C.J. just says, oh, yeah, I know that we call this, whatever, XY switch, whatever it would be at Ohio State. And apparently, maybe it happened a couple times, and Bobby Slowick just kind of jumped him, said, I don't give a what you call it, Ohio State. That's college. This is pro football. And Bobby kind of got in his face about it, And CJ's not one to back down at all. And CJ, and I don't know if Bobby was testing him or I don't know what the deal was, but CJ jumped up and got back in his face. And it was very contentious. It had to be kind of broken up. And so when CJ went to his next draft meeting, and I talked to the team where CJ went, because I asked this team, hey, did you hear anything about this with CJ Stroud? And they said, oh, we asked CJ how his last visit went, which was Houston. And he said, terrible. I don't think I'll be going there. And people who train, like CJ's whole crew did not want him to go to Houston. And they didn't think he was going to Houston because it was he and Bobby got into it. And then CJ was drafted by Houston, which that's one of the reasons I was really surprised. Like I kind of wrote, after finding that out, I wrote CJ off from the Texans and I thought, okay, this is Will Anderson for sure. And so when they traded for him, I was very surprised because I knew there was that lingering stuff there. But then in discussing all of it last year, I heard it was squashed. Like there was no issue. Bobby and him were good.
It's a fascinating
It really
story.
is. You know who his offensive coordinator was at Ohio State? I feel like you should.
Oh, is it the former Indiana coach?
Yeah, Kevin Wilson. Yeah, who was fired at Tulsa this past season.
Kevin Wilson famously, has some personality. I don't want to call them defects, but
he had success.
He was
at Oklahoma.
Apparently, he was the Oklahoma quarterbacks coach,
offensive coordinator,
and then he went to Indiana. And they weren't awful. They're not what they have been under Cignetti, obviously for a year. But Kevin Wilson has bounced around a good bit.
It all kind of comes around. He was there at Oklahoma with Josh Heupel. He left. Heupel stayed, and then Heupel obviously was not retained a few years later. But, yeah, terribly unsuccessful stint at Indiana, and then he was the OC at Ohio State. Ryan Day was the play caller until Chip Kelly came along.
Yeah, Bobby Slow at getting fired is curious because though Houston hasn't named a new offensive coordinator as far as I know. I haven't seen anything to that effect. And also it gives a little bit of extra credence as to whether the Titans thought they might be able to get C.J. Stroud. Because I want to know who his next meeting was after Houston, to be honest with you, who he told that he didn't think he was going to go there, which may have breathed life into the idea that C.J. Stroud could have been had by a team willing to trade up, and then kind of the debacle that saw the Titans miss the opportunity to get C.J. Stroud when there were plenty of people in that organization who, of course, would have wanted him. He's a very talented quarterback.
They haven't made a hire, right?
No, that's what I just said. I didn't. At least last I checked.
Like they haven't made, and we don't know what the latest is on the interview process or anything.
No, I had double checked before Greg and I talked about it this morning, and I hadn't seen any new information. More of your phone calls, the final hour. Speaking of carousel, we talked about some coaching fits today. There's some interesting changes in the AFC South, and we'll get into those coming up next.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. Breaking news this morning, Nashville has put in a bid for a WNBA expansion franchise called the Tennessee Summit. The ownership group, led by former Governor Bill Haslam, it includes former Lady Vol Candace Parker, Peyton Manning, and Tim McGraw and Faith Hill. The bid is with a target date of 2028, and the team would play in Bridgestone Arena. Titans defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons was named to the Pro Bowl roster on Wednesday as a replacement for Ravens defensive tackle Nnamdi Madubuike. Simmons has 5 sacks, or had 5 sacks, in the 2024 season. It is the 3rd Pro Bowl of his career. The Nashville Predators dropped a home loss to the Canucks on Wednesday, 3-1. That marks back-to-back losses for the Preds following the 5-game win streak. Nashville remains second to last in the Western Conference. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour today. Thanks for stopping by. We've got some coaching fits to talk about. NFL coaching carousel continues on. We've got one opening left, as we've talked about several times this week. The New Orleans Saints do not have a head coach just yet. They are expected to hire Kellen Moore, who's currently the offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl-bound Philadelphia Eagles. By the way, 3HL at Super Bowl next week. They're going to have a lot of cool interviews. They'll have a lot of fun discussions throughout the course of the week, and plus it's slaying New Orleans.
What more could you want?
Who gets the best of that? Who gets the best of one another in that particular situation? Does Slay get the better of New Orleans, or does New Orleans get the better of Slay?
Oh, it'll be an all-time matchup. True heavyweight fight.
Well, I mean, you haven't been on one of those trips with 3HL, have you? Because I went to Super Bowl with them a couple of years ago when it was in Los Angeles, and Kirby kept sitting down a bunch of blue hair Hall of Famers with me at 8 a.m. Pacific time that I didn't know who they were, and I had a terrible experience. But
I bet they were very significant people, too, in the NFL world. He probably sat like, I don't know, Brian Billick down in front of you, and you're like,
I know who Brian Billick is.
Who's this guy, Kirby?
Okay.
What, did you pluck the janitor out of a closet?
8 a.m. Radio Row, all right? It basically is the janitor wandering around.
You didn't know that Drew Brees was a Charger when we started this show, so I would believe that you would not know who Brian Billick is.
It happened one time. It's fine. But the experience to go with them to a Super Bowl for all the Super Bowl festivities is a great time. Dawn the wild card in that situation. People think it's all Slay's, Slay is the source of any kind of mischief that might be started. No, it's definitely Dawn.
Yeah, but she also whips them into shape. Now, did Slay...
Well, she's the one most ready to go the following day after said mischief occurs.
Super Bowl last year was Vegas, correct?
Yeah, but I think L.A. was... I don't know, it was like the first year.
It was a couple years ago.
Show.
Did Slay come out victorious over Vegas? Joseph is back there.
No.
Joseph, can you just nod or shake your head?
I would not say. Yeah, we don't want to hear from you.
Did Slay come out victorious over Vegas? Oh, he's nodding his head. Very.
Yes.
Emphatically.
Here's the thing, all right? You can't kill this man. There is no amount of consumption of food or beverage that will slow this man down.
Only Chunky Junkie can hold Slay back from anything.
And even then, because Chris is a force of nature there to chase down Chunky Junkie if anything goes awry. The two of them, and Chris was with us in Los Angeles, so that was a good time as well. But either way, we'll talk more Super Bowl next week. The reason that we're talking about the Super Bowl at all is because the Saints can't hire Kellen Moore until basically he gets through with the Super Bowl at this point in time. Now,
that seems like a foregone conclusion, right?
Well, he's just one of the last ones left.
Yeah.
Who recently, Patrick Graham pulled himself out of the running for the job, the Raiders defensive coordinator.
Everybody's reporting that, everybody's kind of winking and saying he's the favorite, but it's probably going to happen. But, we saw, Josh McDaniels commit to the Colts job and then pull out. So
that's very different.
No, I know, but I'm just saying it's not final till it's final.
Okay, that's reasonable. Either way, a lot of coaching hires. Now, a lot of people get caught up in the head coaching cycle, but all three, theoretically, all 4 AFC South teams made substantial coaching changes this year. For the Titans, it was what? It's John Fossil. replacing Colt Anderson as a first-time special teams coordinator, replacing him with a veteran special teams coordinator, regarded as one of the best, if not the best, at his specific craft, who's also bringing in additional people to help make this not a catastrophe, or at least keep it from being just. They weren't even below average. They were the worst last year, even once they kind of stopped the bleeding. So they have significant progress to make. They need the special teams to be a plus and not a minus. And it's been quite some time. I mean, really since Darius Jennings and Khalif Raymond were here that the Titans have had real pluses on special teams, not named Morgan Cox.
In terms of, got to turn the mic on to talk.
Oh, my God.
In terms of return
the problem with
men,
him is he's loud enough that my mic will pick him up.
We both do that routinely.
No, just you.
Oh, stop it. Buck literally did it like last Friday.
Yeah, and it's one compared to like the 10 times that you do it.
What? You are so extreme. Everything is so extreme.
No, it's just because we're making the criticism about you today instead of me.
But in terms of return men, they've had a plus at punter, right? Nick Folk was a plus at kicker, but they have not had a difference-maker return man since then.
Stonehouse had one really.
No, I know, but you said since
year.
Jennings, Raymond, they've not had a plus anywhere on special teams. That's not true.
Well, I said not named Morgan Cox.
Right, but they have had good punting and kicking since then. But they have not had a spark.
Punting.
They have not had a spark. Ryan Stonehouse broke an NFL record in 2023, and Brett Kern has punted since then.
And a couple of injuries ago.
I understand that. Just you being hyperbolic as usual.
No, I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm talking about a punter who is regarded for being able to get it significantly down the field, and that's fine. But like the directional stuff, the coffin corner stuff is kind of evaporated.
The special teams took a major dip last year, right? You said they have not had a plus in special teams other than Morgan Cox since Khalif Raymond was here. That is not true. They have not had a plus or a spark in the return game since Khalif Raymond and Darius Jennings were back there. That is true. The Cowboys, one of, if not the best return teams in the NFL last year, they also have Kevontae Turpin, and the Titans do not.
Most teams do.
Most teams don't. Yeah, he's electric. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how Bones toys with that this year. And also some of that trickery. I've been trying to track down the NFL leader in fake punts and kicks, and it is a stat that is very hard to find.
Yeah, I don't even know.
The team that leads the NFL in the most attempted fakes.
Start looking for that. That's not something that Pro Football Focus or Pro Football Reference have at your disposal. Maybe
no, I can't find it anywhere. I'm trying because I don't know if that is a big part of his game. Right? Is he the type of special teams coach to just constantly be pitching stuff? Right? Like being creative with. You know, maybe not getting
I think it's more about being fundamentally sound and technically sound and like not making errors that allow Dameon Pierce to escape an arm tackle and run for 80 yards, like preventing the disaster plays. Again, if they just cut out the disaster plays, it's probably a league average special teams unit in terms of return, in terms of field goals and extra points made and all these other things by which every other special teams unit in the league is judged by. This one is judged very differently because it's judged on the number of disasters that it had last year, from blocked punts to huge returns to just awful holes in their kicking coverage, all kind of things beyond Nick Folk being the most reliable thing that they've got as a special teams producer, and arguably one of the more stabilizing transactions that they've made in the last 2 off seasons.
For sure. Would you say he was a plus?
Yeah.
He definitely was.
Dwight is up next, 615-737-1045, if you want to chime in.
Yes, I was just wanted to talk about something we fairly rarely talk about, and that is one of the major important components of winning a game, some of the smartest guys in the game, and that's the offensive line.
Wait, Dwight, before you continue with your point, you don't think that in the past 5 years we have not talked enough about the offensive line?
I think in general, most people don't. They tend to talk about the people who move the ball and the people who stop those moving the ball. And I think one of the big reasons that the Chiefs are going to win in the Super Bowl is because of the holes in the Eagles' offensive line. They just don't get a lot of praise or attention or anything. You know, they're very rarely talked about, but they can make a so-so quarterback look brilliant, and they can make a great quarterback look like crap. And, we didn't tend to not. I think not just you. It's not a personal thing. It's just in general, the offensive line are not given the attention and the praise and the analysis that they need. But I think they deserve the recognition.
Okay. Do you agree with that assessment that we do not give enough credence to the offensive line discussion?
Again, he's not talking about you.
No.
He's talking in general, saying the offensive line is an overlooked piece of the puzzle when people talk about football, and he's absolutely right.
What?
He is absolutely right.
Who is overlooking offensive line play anywhere that's talking about football?
In terms of calm down, deep breath. You're going to be okay.
He's not right. That's a ridiculous thing.
We've been talking about offensive line struggles here for the last couple of years.
I'm not saying just us. I'm saying anywhere in football. When you are analyzing football, you are talking about every NFL. Didn't we not start the show with every NFL general manager having on their buzzword bingo card, talking about building through the trenches? This is not an adored position by any stretch of the imagination. What do you mean he's right?
It's a big picture general statement. Offensive line, one of the more overlooked, they don't get the praise they deserve. He's correct. The Houston Tech, because offensive linemen, Buck, are what the NFL is rolling out in promos.
About with Philadelphia that's not named Saquon.
All right, man, look.
The Philadelphia offensive line gets more credit than the damn quarterback does.
C.J. Stroud took a big step back this year. A big reason for that was the offensive line.
And everybody talked about it.
Right. No, not everybody talked about it.
Yes, everybody watching the Texans offensive. We talked about it. Greg Cosell talked about it.
We did.
NFL Live and ESPN, NFL Network. Who's not talking about this?
You're very upset.
It's stupid.
Offensive lineman.
It's unbelievably dumb. What do you mean? This is you talk about me having weird hills to die on? What are you talking about?
Offensive line is one of the more overlooked positions in sports when you talk about the stars of a sport.
Sure.
It is.
Stars
and
of
I think that's all he's saying. All right? So you don't have to go at the guy.
He's talking I'm going at you because you're agreeing with something that offensive line play is something that's overlooked by people talking about football.
He is talking. All right, we need to move on here because you're getting very angry and defensive. You're going to be okay.
I'm not defensive. Right? I'm aggressive. I think this is nonsense what you're saying.
How often do offensive linemen say, the big uglies don't get the credit we deserve, right? Like all the time. All the time, okay? We've been talking about it a lot.
I'm not talking about a guard that feels slighted because we don't understand his hand placement techniques. I'm talking about the success and failure of football teams and how much of it is discussed around success or failure by the people responsible for protecting the most important position.
The people that are watching tape and talking about it, absolutely. But it doesn't get flat out ignored, but it gets overlooked when we talk about Pat Mahomes versus Josh Allen, even though they don't share the field together at any point.
Yeah, because you're not going to put the Bills left tackle and I mean, you might put Chris Jones on the NBC Sunday Night Football graphic.
Yeah,
no, that's not how you.
That's all he's talking about. That's all he's talking about.
No,
you don't have to get that upset about it.
I'm getting upset about it because you're talking about the marketing of football versus the analysis of football, and somehow you've conflated those two things.
Yeah, that's all he's talking about. Like how often do we hear people say like, "Oh, those guys don't get enough respect," all the time. That's all he's talking about. All right. Thank you for the call, Dwight. It's okay. Buck's going to take a deep breath during the break.
I'm not the wrong one here. The thing that I'm getting defensive about is him being passive aggressive about this.
I'm with Buck on this one. When they say these guys don't get enough respect, they are giving these guys respect. They go on to give these guys respect.
So all the time in the world you hear people saying, we don't give them enough respect, while paying them respect for the job that they just did about protecting the quarterback, running the football, all these different things. Saquon Barkley is having a perfect example.
This is a beautiful example. This is Jay in the FNM Bank chat says, if an O-line isn't being talked about, that means they're doing their jobs. How often do we say that? We said that multiple times at training camp, right? You know who we haven't talked about? Peter Skoronski. Why? Because he's playing well.
You're running through these things through our prism. We're talking that way specifically because all you could talk about is how god-awful Andre Dillard and Dennis Daly.
Who? Andre what?
Got a break.
We dubbed that?
Got a break. Trajan Wealth is here to help you because you can start the new year off right with a new financial plan, and Trajan Wealth has the tools to keep you on the right track and guide you through it. That's TRAJAN Wealth. Trajan Wealth is not just any financial firm. They're your partners in securing your financial future. They're more than just a fiduciary firm. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience specializing in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and your peace of mind. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000. Or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com for more information. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement. All right, let's see if we can get through the segment without any kind of verbal miscues. We are 0 days without an incident around here.
0 days since our last nonsense.
You got so upset you were fumbling over your words. You couldn't even speak.
I was not upset.
No, you were not upset.
I'm not upset. I'm I'm distraught. Upset doesn't even begin to describe how disappointed I am in you trying to pivot that conversation into something entirely different.
If you just were to grab somebody at, I don't know, the AFC Championship, any NFL game, and pull them aside and say, name the top 5 guards in the NFL.
They're going to throw up on you or something because they're drunk at a football game. What are you talking about?
Okay, well, yeah, you're just deflecting because you can't name the top 5 guards in the NFL. But if I ask you to name the top 5...
this year?
Yes. But if I ask you to name the top 5 receivers in the NFL, you rattle them off. That's all the guy was saying, man. I could probably say... That's all he was saying.
No, but in terms of like the metrics on which these players are judged by, Like, I don't know that I could tell you the top 5 like receiving leaders this year. I know Jamar Chase is up there. I know Justin Jefferson
stop it. You can tell me, you can give me 5 receivers that you believe are the 5 best receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, but I wouldn't know those things definitively. Like in terms of how many receptions they had that year. You're talking about something completely different.
I wouldn't have asked you. Give me the 5. Name the statistics of the 5 receiving leaders.
It's okay to be wrong. How many times have you told me that?
You're just upset because you can't name 5 of the top 5 guards in the NFL, but you know you can name the top 5 receivers, which was the guy's whole point.
I wonder if I could name the top 5 guards.
No, you couldn't, because 90% of people couldn't.
We are not having the same conversation.
I mean, let's pull Ramon in here and say, Ramon, do offensive linemen get the credit they deserve?
That's a stupid conversation. That's not the conversation that we're having.
The answer would be no. That's all the guy was saying.
You're talking about how people market football as opposed to what football people talk about in what decides games. These are 2 separate conversations. Why are you trying to mix them still? We spent too much time on this in the past segment. We did it during the commercial break. Enough. Let's talk about the offensive line.
They don't get no respect.
And whether the Titans should start there or the quarterback. Okay, Lucas, has the Titans' offensive line been discussed enough for you? How many principal parties would Titans fans be able to know because they've put their posters around town being as essentially, arrest warrants for Andre Dillard and Dennis Daly? I'm sure every Titans fan could name every Titans offensive lineman that's played 15 snaps for them in the last 3 years because they've all been nightmares.
Right, because they've been bad, which again leans into the point. Nobody talks about them when they're good.
People talk more about things that happen when the things that happen negatively impact their team. It doesn't matter what position it is.
Did Calvin Ridley...
Unless you're winning Super Bowls on a regular basis and your greatness is such that you are immune to some level of criticism like Patrick Mahomes, or apparently you're Josh Allen who gets... I think Bert has been on this crusade. Have you noticed that Josh Allen's been a bit more coddled in the aftermath of the Chiefs' loss than, say, Lamar Jackson was, where Lamar Jackson's playoff record is being cited and Josh Allen's playoff record is being cited, and people are saying, do you feel bad for Josh Allen? Those are conversations being had.
You still aren't naming the top 5 guards in the NFL.
I'll get to it.
Because you can't. Yeah, no, as he pulls up PFF rankings.
No, I don't have my PFF
because he can't, which again is the point.
That's not the point at all. Okay. I don't want to have this conversation anymore, except for the fact that we need to have this conversation about the Titans' offensive line.
Okay, so offensive line first or quarterback first is the discussion. Pro Football Network ranked 1 through 32 the best offensive lines in the 2024 season. Who do you think they graded as the number 1 offense? We're going to really test your offensive line knowledge since they're so talked about. Who do you think was graded as the number 1 offensive line in the NFL by Pro Football Network?
Pro Football Network?
PFN.
What are they? Okay, so let's just say Detroit.
No.
Philadelphia?
No.
Buffalo?
No.
Those are 3 of the 5 best offensive line units in the sport this year. You want to tell me who's number 1?
The Denver Broncos.
Based on?
The Denver Broncos offensive line.
What is their overall assessment of why the Denver Broncos are the best offensive line in football?
Well,
it's not a bad submission, but I don't know that anybody would, by the metrics, judge the Denver offensive line to be significantly better than Detroit, Philadelphia, or Buffalo.
Do you know what PBWR is?
PB, pass block win rate?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know what RBWR is?
Run block win rate?
Correct.
Okay.
So
these are ESPN metrics.
They rank top of ESPN's pass block and run block win rate, and they have multiple individuals inside the top 10 of their categories.
Because there's a lot, it's just like quarterback rating. Like, what's going into these specific metrics to determine that they're a better assessment of offensive line
play?
That
is for the scientists to find out. That is, you can go ahead and start to crunch the numbers on that.
I'm not going to. There are numbers that you can look at. It's not crunching of numbers. It's looking at how many pressures did they allow? How many times was the run stuffed against them? How many times did they allow tackles for loss? Like, this isn't some kind of highly scientific equation that you have to fumble through.
Henry on the F&M Bank chat asks for you to name 2 people on Denver's offensive line, since they're never overlooked and talked about very much.
All right, I can picture the one that was at the Senior Bowl because he likes to wear the half-belly jersey.
And you have no idea what his name is.
Is it? It starts with an M. Is it?
You could probably name like 3 Broncos receivers, or so you probably can't name a single
Lloyd
Denver
Christenberry is a
offensive
former Denver Broncos offensive lineman. Garrett Bowles is a Denver Broncos offensive lineman.
Oh, you got one.
A miserable Denver Broncos offensive lineman. He just signed a contract.
One. Oh, but they're so discussed. We lead every football discussion with offensive line play.
Quinton or Quinton?
I think the point has been made here.
No, that's not the point at all. We talk about the offensive line units. You're correct. We don't individualize the players that way, but the offensive line groups are discussed as much as wide receivers, as much as maybe not as much as quarterbacks, but as much as defensive line groups.
Love this.
Like there are individual defensive line groups that are talked about without individual players being mentioned.
People are just naming offensive linemen on the F&M Bank chat. Oh, wait, I thought of one. Here's one.
Minerts? What's the...
Quinn Miners is who you're thinking
Quinn
of.
Miners, yeah.
Ben Powers, all among the best at their position. Again, just strengthening the point. But the main point here is...
No, you're not strengthening any point. Your point is that offensive line is not talked about when offensive lines are talked about plenty.
You've lost. It's okay.
Are not scrutinized to that level unless they are god-awful like Andre Dillard.
I'll get Jackson to give you a hug after the show. You're going to be all right.
Why do I want a hug from Jackson? That's going to make me angry.
I feel like Jackson gives amazing hugs.
I don't think that's true at all.
I got references.
So, the best rookie quarterbacks in the NFL in 2024, as we talk about what should come first, offensive line or quarterback. Bo Nix was a pretty good one. Pro Football Network ranks the Broncos offensive line as the best in the NFL. Jaden Daniels was a very good one. PFN ranks the Commanders offensive line as the 8th best in the NFL. Caleb Williams had his struggles. They rank the Bears O-line as the 17th best in the NFL.
Which is not as bad as some people, I think, would grade. If you were just asked, did the Bears have a good offensive line group this year? And 17th isn't good. It's league average. But if you ask most people if the Bears had a league average offensive line group, they'd probably say no. But what does Caleb Williams also suffer from? He puts his offensive line in bad situations. Like, he does not help that offensive line unit, which is a part of why Ben Johnson is going to Chicago to help improve that, because they did, there are reasons to look at what the Bears did, see the amount of sacks that Caleb Williams could be directly credited with, as opposed to, I know Nate Davis didn't end up being a starting guard for them, but just because he's an offensive lineman from the Bears that I could name. Or is he still on the Bears? Is he a free agent?
See, offensive line guru, Buck Rising. I bet you can name Bears receivers, but can't name any Bears offensive linemen. The Texans.
Keenan Allen still there?
The 31st ranked offensive line. Again, strengthening the point. The Texans, the 31st offensive line ranked by PFN. CJ Stroud took a massive step back, obviously. The Pats were 32nd, dead last for them. Titans 28th, excuse me.
In terms of pass block win rate and run block win rate. So I wonder how much higher, for example, the Titans would grade out as a run blocking unit as opposed to a pass blocking unit. Like, how much are they hurt by their pass blocking grade versus their run blocking win rate?
All this to say,
because they were I thought they were a completely reasonable run blocking group last year.
All this to say, it's not a coincidence that the best rookie quarterbacks of this past season were playing behind top 10 offensive lines in the NFL. So when we have that discussion of quarterback first or offensive line first, if your answer is quarterback first, then you're bringing in a rookie quarterback. It doesn't have to be, but theoretically, you'd be bringing in a rookie quarterback to play behind this offensive line. And the Titans will address right tackle, right? They've said as much. I don't know
They'll
how.
Try.
Right.
They've been trying to address right tackle for 5 straight years.
So could the offensive line make improvements in 2025? You would think so. J.C. Latham taking another step. I don't know what Lloyd Cushenberry's timetable is really going to be. They've got a question at guard. Dylan Radins is a free agent. Obviously a massive question at right tackle. We know who the left tackle and left guard will be, but we don't know who the center will be week 1. Right? Cushenberry says he'll be ready for training camp.
Saying that he's going to be ready.
We'll see.
I appreciate the attitude, because of course he wants to be ready, but I don't think it's realistic. He's putting a lot of pressure on himself to come back. Coming off an Achilles tear. I don't know. I would just be a little more measured with that.
History will tell you that offensive line first puts you in the best position to succeed.
But Titans fans, there's a percentage of Titans fans that don't want to hear that.
Right.
Because they're most focused on number 1 overall pick, There are quarterbacks. I don't care if they're not the best quarterbacks in the world. There are quarterbacks. Take a quarterback number one. Are you stupid? And I get that impulse. I really do. I can get it. I can understand it and still fundamentally disagree with it. There is no scenario in which you put any other quarterback in this situation without addressing the offensive line and expect to have significantly better results. Like, you can have better results if you just don't have a quarterback that is solely responsible for 18 total turnovers. You will improve if the quarterback cuts that in half. And that's still 9 total turnovers. I mean, there are quarterbacks who didn't throw anywhere close to 9 interceptions in football this year. Or fumbles. I think that the offensive line group for this particular team, and no, every situation is unique, right? The Bears are a different situation. They fired a coach. They have a number 1 overall pick at quarterback. Now, because you have that pick at quarterback, would you not agree that that dictates everything else that your team is going to have to do? When you have a Trevor Lawrence, who's a number 1 overall draft pick, much less Trevor Lawrence, who you've already paid a contract, is everything not done in service of improving that player?
For sure.
Because you take that quarterback, it dictates everything else.
Dictates your head coaching hire.
Absolutely. Everything that organization does is in service to the number 1 overall draft pick at quarterback that you invested in. Titans don't have that yet. So does it not make more sense to stick with what's been the company line since Mike Borgonzi started giving press conferences a couple of weeks ago, which is taking what they say about building through the trenches and putting legitimate credence in it, other than, oh, well, it's a smokescreen. They're trying to get somebody to trade up because they want an offensive tackle, or they don't have enough interest in the quarterback, or it's all just lying season right now. Just kind of casting comments aside because it's easy to do that at this time of year. No, I think there's legitimate value in what they're saying if they're able to execute it properly by focusing first and foremost on the repair of this offensive line group before they invest the most important asset they have in the most important position. Regardless of, and it doesn't matter to me which of the quarterbacks people like here. You're just saying that because you don't like Shador, or you're just saying that because you don't like Cam Ward, or whatever the case may be. No, it's got something to do with them, obviously. But it's got more so to do with the places that this team has obviously struggled. How many Titans teams in the last 5 years have been actively undermined by their offensive line group?
Every year since the 2021 season.
22 was Daly.
Yes.
23 was Dillard. 24, obviously, NPF and the revolving door at right tackle. And, Dylan Radin's playing, but not playing well enough, I think, maybe you keep him as a depth piece, but I don't think that's a starting caliber offensive lineman. You have to get the thing in front of the quarterback right first, or as close to right as humanly possible. There's not that many quarterbacks that can outright negate less than average offensive line. Think about how much, even if it's not Will Levis, let's just make it about Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph, who's infinitely more decisive with the football, gets the ball out way quicker than Will Levis. How many games could Mason Rudolph have at least kept them more competitive had he not been getting tabletopped by defenders because the right side of the offensive line would just cave in?
Yeah, Pro Football Network has the Bengals as the 29th best offensive line in the NFL this past year, one back of the Titans. That's the greatness of Joe Burrow, right? He had an MVP caliber individual season behind that.
And we weren't talking about his offensive line problems because they still exist. And to the Bengals' credit, the Bengals have gone out and paid offensive linemen. They've traded for offensive linemen. They've drafted offensive linemen. And they still haven't been able to get it right. Teams chase this sometimes.
Brock Purdy took a big step back. Now, I know they had a ton of injuries all over the place. Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. So that has a lot to do with it. But the offensive line play took a step back. Trent Williams being out was a big reason why they're ranked 14th in this PFN offensive line rating.
Keith says of the
also the
Mason Rudolph comparison, he says that's because he dinked and dunked Mason Rudolph. That's fine. You can win that way sometimes. You can at least sustain offense that way sometimes. How many teams are content to just take the 5-yard completion? How many teams are running offenses where they have 8 to 10 explosive plays, 20-plus yard plays in any given game. That doesn't happen. Most teams have to move the ball methodically that way.
Now, this is interesting. They have the Eagles O-line as number 12 in the NFL. And they acknowledge that it's a little bit unfair. It's influenced by their poor regular season finale showing when they rested everybody. But the Eagles had the second worst sack rate, the Eagles offensive line in the NFL, and they had the worst pressure rate, 40.6% pressure rate in the NFL.
I'd just be curious to know what differences that Pro Football Network has versus Pro Football Focus versus Pro Football Reference, because all of them have some level of variation to that.
Mm-hmm.
But like how they're determining pressure rate versus the way that Pro Football Focus.
Yeah. I mean, the high-end talent on the Eagles offensive line is probably the best in the league, arguably the best in the league. So, yeah, it is hard to put two and two of those together, which is another reason why offensive line play doesn't get discussed as much, because it's hard for people to evaluate, people that don't watch football, that don't break down the tape, that don't do X's and O's, that don't watch football in the way a coach watches football. Are you telling me that you can sit there and watch an offensive line and know what their assignments are and evaluate that? No. But people can watch wide receivers.
Telling me that you can do that with a quarterback too? No, but people try to all the time.
But it's easier to discern success. It's easier to discern success when a wide receiver is running past defensive backs and running and catching 1,000-yard seasons.
Easier to discern success if an offensive line gives up a sack or not.
Right.
That's failure. The most cut and dried way to determine success or failure that exists in football. Was there a sack on the play? If yes, then failure. If no, then did the quarterback complete the pass?
So many factors. There's a million different variables.
Again, you are moving the goalposts on this argument for reasons that are completely beyond me.
Name 5 guards.
Next.
Not even the top 5. Just 5. No. Let him name 5 guards.
I'm not going to break till you name 5 guards.
In the National Football League. Not the top 5. Just 5.
Do Titans players count?
No.
No, they don't count.
Okay, that's fine. Are you saying that on matter of because of the offensive line struggles or because?
Or former Titans.
Well, that's not fair to do.
No, former Titans count. Just active. They have to be active.
Trey Smith.
Okay.
Shaq Mason. Quinn Meinertz.
Whose name you did not know about 10 minutes ago.
Quentin Nelson.
Oh, he's struggling.
Is Ben Powers a Ravens guard?
Yeah, he doesn't even know who he plays for. Point proven. Thank you.
Zeitler's a guard.
Now name 5 receivers. You would name 30. That's the point. That's all the guy was trying to say.
I don't think that's true. Now can we go to break? All right, we got some pretty serious allegations being reported by an outlet in Baltimore. The Baltimore Banner has a piece on their website talking about 2 spas in the area, saying that they banned Justin Tucker, the Baltimore Ravens kicker. He is denying the bans and the behavior that women say has left them emotionally scarred. This is directly from the Baltimore Banner's website, baltimorebanner.com. I'll just read you the first graph. Fair warning, it's a bit graphic, but FCC safe. Ravens kicker Justin Tucker, again, allegedly engaged in inappropriate behavior at 4 high-end spas and wellness centers in the Baltimore region, according to 6 massage therapists, including exposing his genitals, brushing 2 of them with his exposed penis, and leaving what they believe to be ejaculate on the massage table after 3 of his treatments. Several therapists said Tucker's behavior was so egregious that they ended his sessions early or refused to work on him again, and at 2 spas, management said they banned him from returning. So again, this is a report that's been put out there by the BaltimoreBanner.com in Baltimore, and it goes into further detail about the alleged interactions between the Ravens kicker and these massage therapists, and how that has continued to be an ongoing narrative throughout the course of the Baltimore Ravens season. It doesn't clarify how long they've been reporting out this story, and full disclosure, I've just been able to briefly skim it during the commercial break. I haven't been able to read the full piece yet. Alleged allegations at this time, but, I mean, that's pretty serious stuff.
They've talked to 6 massage therapists.
Yeah.
And his attorneys have denied the allegations, called them speculative and impossible to prove.
Well, it may be just that. I mean, they had proven levels of explicit behavior with Deshaun Watson. It's just how many of those cases he settled as opposed to, continuing to litigate was the biggest differentiation there. I suppose that'll be an ongoing story throughout the course of the year. You don't want to just make it about Tucker's performance either, but it's worth noting that Justin Tucker did not have the best season for the Baltimore Ravens. He hurt his career field goal percentage significantly, being one of the best in history throughout the course of the season. And we have no idea whether the underlying tones of this were things that may have impacted him. And again, this is the first reporting to any effect that we've seen on this. I'm sure that there will be additional follow-ups, but to Lucas's point, Tucker's attorney denied that he was banned from either spa, claiming neither establishment informed him that he could not return. They sent a screenshot of an undated photo of Tucker posing with, and this is one of the massage parlors, I guess, Studio 921 staff, that appeared to be posted by the spa on the website TripAdvisor in December 2016 after the alleged ban. They also provided copies of an email from 2018 that showed the spa was actively inviting him back for additional appointments.
Pretty serious stuff.
That is less than ideal. Well, we'll see if there's any developments on that front in the coming days, but obviously that has great consequence for the kicker himself, for the Baltimore Ravens organization. How much did they know? How much did they not know? Obviously, going back to do we need to call the lawyer? Do we need to call Dan?
It's been a while since we talked to Dan Lust.
Let's go dust off Dan's phone number and call him, see if he can walk us through some of the legalese on this. The thing about the Texans, or rather the Deshaun Watson situation, that made it more inflammatory, not that you needed additional reasons to make his situation more inflammatory, but that the Texans had provided him with non-disclosure agreements in some of these sessions that he had. So there is the level of, how long has this been going on? When was the team made aware? Was the team made aware? And if so, when was the team made aware? And were they any party to facilitating any of the alleged behavior? I imagine is where this takes its next steps as they try and figure out what's more than just alleged in this situation? What can be proven as fact? Graceful transition to, I'm sure, what's going to be a cringy poll open. Let's see what you got back there. Okay, that's a safe one. I was worried it was going to be Borat. I'm glad you decided not to go with Austin Powers back there.
You handled that gracefully, Jackson. Polls are presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Were you surprised the Titans attracted the top general manager candidate in Mike Borgonzi? 65% say yes, they were surprised.
Say it again.
65% of the votes say they were surprised that the Titans were able to attract the top GM candidate on the market in Mike Borgonzi.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I was.
Which quarterback stock do you think will rise the most during the draft process? 59% say Dart. So he gets the majority of the votes. 24.5% say Will Howard. Then Jalen Milroe at 8.5%. 7.8% say Kyle McCord. So it goes Dart by a large margin. Then Howard, Milroe, McCord.
That's an interesting question to try and answer because it doesn't sound like Milroe's had an overwhelmingly great performance at the Senior Bowl.
I am bracing myself for him to crush the combine.
Yeah, because that's the thing that stands out between him and every other quarterback that you mentioned there, that he's got way higher athletic upside than any of the other ones.
I'm just mentally preparing myself for the discourse that's going to follow that I know is going to drive me insane.
Why are you so upset about this?
Because we just did this with Anthony Richardson. We just did it. What should the Titans...
And that was a way more athletic quarterback than Jalen Milroe.
Not as fast. What should the Titans prioritize first this offseason? Offensive line or quarterback? 58% say offensive line.
I'm surprised by that, but I'm in favor. I'm with the 58%.
Yes, I agree. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. Do you think Jeffrey Simmons had a Pro Bowl worthy season? 65% say no.
Again, it depends on how you qualify a Pro Bowl worthy season. The Pro Bowl's never been more watered down than it is right now. The nomination still means something. He's an alternate. It's worth noting. Again, Jeff didn't have a bad season, but he didn't have a special season. And I think there's an expectation from Tennessee Titans fans that Jeff Simmons is supposed to be a special player.
He is in for Nnamdi Madubuike, who used to be called Justin Madubuike, and he officially changed his first name.
When did that happen?
Yes, he changed his first name, honoring his Nigerian heritage.
Recently?
I believe last off season.
Oh,
I want to say, I think he wears like a sticker of the Nigerian flag on his helmet, cool. and yes, so not Justin Madubuike. So people may not recognize that first name, Nnamdi. How do you feel about Nashville pursuing a WNBA team? Love it, don't care, or hate it? 59.3% say don't care. 26% say they love it. 14.7% say they hate it.
Yeah, it's just a bid, so there's no great reason to care right now. I don't think it's a bad idea by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. I don't think it should be met with as much, I don't think it's a great many people that are acting like they're offended at the idea of women's basketball being played in Nashville, Tennessee. I don't think that's it at all, but I do think that there are some very loud people that have weird objections to this for some reason.
Regardless of what the loudest people say, if you build a winner, fans will engage.
Yeah.
Like that is batting 1,000, right? Just across the board. It's happened here with soccer, with hockey, obviously football. It will happen with the WNBA. If you build a winner, Bridgestone Arena will be rocking for those games. I have no doubt about that.
Agreed.
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. We'll talk a little more draft prospect work tonight. Probably take a little closer look at the Senior Bowl quarterbacks than we've been able to do here today. See you then, 7 p.m. on A to Z Sports.